It's called,
Sounds up. Whenever you're ready, you can start.
okay. A call to order the Queen Anne's County Planning Commission's meeting for Thursday, January 13th, 2022. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. John.
This could be an interesting meeting.
It is. You may watch the Planning Commission meeting live on QACTV or Facebook or YouTube. And QACTV's television channel on Atlantic Broadband, which now has a new name. Breeze something?
Breeze line.
Breeze line. You may also participate on Zoom using the following link, qac.org/public comment. This option will be available 10 minutes before the start of the meeting. Election of officers. So we have Jeff. Jeff is going to do a nomination.
Good morning, everyone. I would like to re-nominate in a slate, if no one has any objections, with Ms. Dobson as chairman, Mr. Lee as vice chair, and Ms. Kathy as the secretary.
Second.
To you.
Do you want to add clerk to that?
And we have to have the clerk.
And the clerk, amend my motion to include Mr. Shelton as our clerk.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, I have to have a second, don't I? Yeah, we did the second. All right,
Art got it.
good. Public comments?
No virtual comment this time.
And there's none in the room, so that's good. Meeting minutes review.
Madam Chair, I propose we accept the minutes as written.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Extension request, no extension request, but we do have a list of approved project extension requests. And since we're doing it every 2 years now instead of every 6 months, it appears that the first one we have will be in September of this year. For Perry's Retreat. We might
Mr.
be
Johnson,
done by
thank you
then.
for spreadsheets, very easy to track.
No problem.
Yeah.
Thank you, appreciate that.
No problem. The next update will be in June.
That's good. Thank
So
you.
you're gonna plan on putting these out every 6 months?
Correct.
Great, thank
Every
you.
3 months, right? You put
Six.
them out.
Every 6.
Right, this is January, hello. Updates, legislation and legal matters. Amy. Amy, legislation, legal matters?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Amy Mordock, Director of Planning.
Hi, I'm Rob Tracy, Senior Planner.
I'll let you begin. Rob's been working on our legislation.
Okay, so I'd like to provide you with 2 updates. The first is that the County Commissioners on November 23rd have requested an evaluation of the definition of a shooting club as set forth in Appendix A to Chapter 18 in order to strengthen important public and developmental policies. This text amendment will be coming...
Maybe talk a little louder or get into your microphone a little bit better.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, is that better?
That's okay, that's better.
So I'll start over. The County Commissioners on November 23rd requested an evaluation of the definition of a shooting club as defined in Chapter 18 in order to strengthen important public and developmental policies. So that text amendment will be coming to you in February for your review, investigation, and evaluation. The next update is that the Maryland General Assembly convened yesterday, and I'll be working with our county administrator, Todd, to provide legislative updates with him
Just
on
the
legislative
normal
work.
updates.
Yeah, legislative updates to him.
And then any legislation that has any impact on zoning we'll bring before you as a heads up, but everything is still under consideration right now, but once that list is firmed up, then we'll give you updates.
Okay.
And Mr. Mon is the point of contact for legislative liaison to it with Annapolis during session? Thanks.
I guess we also have a lobbyist who works with the county whose name is,
Bruce Barino.
yes, that's it.
Mariano.
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 I apologize.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
I know council typically stays close to that as well.
I'm sorry, I
I'm
was
sorry.
looking at the public.
Legislative matters.
Legislative work in Annapolis, you tend to
And Bruce.
keep an
I
ear
have
out.
to keep a close eye on Bruce.
Somebody has to watch him.
I have a question. With regard to the text amendment about the shooting clubs, can you provide to us I know that DNR is the main overseer of that definition and of those regulations. Is there something you could provide to us that states what the DNR overreaching regs and definition are?
We can put that in your staff report,
I would
a
appreciate it.
copy of that. in
You
your
say
staff report.
DNR? Natural Resources?
Yes.
We don't have any.
Pardon?
I'm not aware that DNR regulates shooting clubs. They regulate hunting.
So I think she's referring to in the current definition, there's a part about regulated shooting areas. I'm sorry, Chris.
As
Speak
defined, I'm
up.
sorry, as defined by
As
DNR.
defined by DNR. My understanding is same with council, that there is no.
Right.
But I can put that in my staff report as well.
Thank you.
We'll clarify that. Other miscellaneous staff items, staff has been busy working on projects and the comprehensive plan. So that's what most of our efforts have been focused upon. I can also let you know we have 2 vacancies in the department right now that we're filling, a permit technician position and also our associate planner's position. We have interviews scheduled for our associate planner, so we hope to fill that soon. We also have been put on notice that one of our inspectors is going to retire, so we'll be filling that position soon as well.
How many inspectors do we have?
3.
And one what?
Oh, and 1 part-time liquor inspector, but 3 zoning inspectors. Yep.
Okay. Is that it?
That's everything.
Okay. Now I'm opening the public hearing regarding the Phase 3 Ingleside Mine application per the specific conditional use standards for major sand and gravel mining operations. Chris Drummond, can you please read the notice of this hearing and for the record?
Not o'clock yet.
Oh, you want to wait until 9?
If we have to.
Well, I'll read the notice, and then we really should wait.
Okay.
The following notice of public hearing appeared in the Record Observer on December 31st in January of 2021 and January 7th of 2022. This is regarding, excuse me, the petition of Bridgetown Development Company, LLC. Planning Commission for Queen Anne's County gives notice pursuant to the Queen Anne's County Code, Chapter 18, subsection 93B6 and 95E2, that it will hold a public hearing concerning a conditional use application for a proposed 278-acre expansion of the existing sand and gravel major extraction operation located on the east side of Bridgetown Road, south of the intersection with Ingleside Road in Ingleside, Maryland. It's tax map 31, parcel 37, and tax map 38, parcel 21, lot 1. The application was submitted by the petitioner, Bridgetown Development Company, LLC. The petitioner's proposal was made under the procedures of Chapter 18.1 of the Queen Anne's County Code. Please take notice that this application shall be considered by the Planning Commission at a public hearing on Thursday, January 13th, 2022 at 9 a.m. here in the conference room of the Department of Planning and Zoning in Centerville, Maryland. The Planning Commission will receive testimony for or against the application. Following the public hearing, the Planning Commission will make recommendations regarding the petitioner's proposal to the county commissioners. I'm sorry, to the County Board of Appeals. This is an open meeting, but upon compliance with the Open Meetings Act, a part or all of the meeting may be conducted in closed session. Notice of the meeting will be posted in the lobby of the Department of Planning and Zoning here in Centerville. The entire petition, as well as a development site plan for the subject property and other relevant materials, available at the Department of Planning and Zoning during regular business hours. The notice of public hearing concludes with information for those with disabilities, including hearing impairments, as how they might access both the building and assistive listening devices. Madam Chairman, I'm satisfied that the notice of procedural prerequisites to convening the public hearing, except for the fact that it's 8:55, have been satisfied.
Come on. Come on.
It's smart. It's a PowerPoint. It's only PowerPoint. Logistics. We have Sean up here. Well. Sean, you want to join us? Plans. Did you know that computer, that laptop? Do you know how to use that?
No.
I'm gonna be.
No, there's a pointer on there or something.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, I will once you.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
It's like Sonic.
I know it yourself.
Left. Was the document I was talking about. If it pops up.
Good morning, Mr. Sylvester. How are you?
Good morning there, y'all.
Good.
Sorry I'm late this morning. I went to the wrong building
You did.
again.
But you forgot we moved.
Told you about the old man thing, right?
Combine I can handle. The school bus is like, really? They're supposed to be in school.
I'm Steve Johnson, County Planner with Queen Anne's County Planning and Zoning. We're here to discuss file number SP 21-07-0078, Ingleside Mine Phase 3 for Bridgetown Development Company. The applicant is proposing expansion of their existing major extraction operation, and they are requesting concept plan approval and favorable recommendation to the Board of Appeals. This slide gives you a little perspective of where the operation is located. It's located to the southwest of Ingleside, near the intersection of Rowe Ingleside Road and Bridgetown Road. The current operation is on parcel 37. The phase 3 expansion will encompass parcel 37 and parcel 21, lot 1. The total acreage of both parcels together is 305.271 acres. Both parcels are zoned ag, and major extraction is a conditional use in that zoning district. Here's a look at the existing conditions. You can see phase 1 and phase 2, they're kind of divided by that bright red line down the center. The limit of disturbance for phases 1 and 2 is 109.576 acres. And there's an existing 653 square feet of floor area and 4.344 acres of impervious area. A compliance inspection was done in October of last year, 2021. The operation was found to be in compliance with no violations, and all the conditions of approval have been met. And there was a copy of the memo of the inspection included in your staff report. This is a look at the existing buffers on site. A couple slides just to give you a perspective of what it looks like out there along the roads. This slide is the proposed phase 3 expansion. It consists of 4 ponds: pond 1A, 1B, 2, and pond 3. The total limits of disturbance will be 255.94 acres. And this represents an overall increase in the LOD from phases 1 and 2 of 146.364 acres. No additional floor area or impervious area is proposed. There's no proposed change in operating hours. The existing office and wash plant material storage will all be in the same location. You can see that there in the orange dotted area. New 16-foot wide grass haul roads are proposed around the extraction areas. Those are shown in bright red. Landscaping berms will be constructed in the perimeter of the site where existing berms do not exist. The berms along the western and southern sides of the property will be 67 feet wide, and the berms along the eastern and northern sections of the site will be 30 foot wide. The 30-foot wide berms are 7 feet tall, and the 67-foot wide berms will be 8 feet tall. And you can see a little cross section of the berms there. They'll be planted with red cedar, loblolly pine, the exact same trees you saw on the slides before. There is a stream on site. There's a 1.068 acre stream shown in fuchsia there on the screen. There's 14.538 acres of stream buffer on the site, shown by the dotted fuchsia line. 20% disturbance of streams and stream buffers is permitted under 18.1-63B. The applicant proposes to disturb 14.6% of the stream buffer, or 1.701 acres, with the construction of the landscape berms. That area is highlighted in yellow there to the right of your screen. DNR did provide documentation that states the site falls within drainage to Long Marsh and Mason Branch, which supports sensitive species. These species are sensitive to siltation and other changes in water quality or hydrology. DNR encouraged the applicant to adhere stringently to all best management practices for sediment and erosion control and avoid altering hydrology in the area. And this letter was included in your staff report as well. There is a non-tidal wetland and its associated buffer on site. It's shown in light blue at the center of your screen. There are 4.211 acres of woodlands on site, .072 acres will be cleared, and this project is exempt from forest conservation under 18.2-4B10. There are existing tax ditches on site, shown there in brown. They are to be relocated or removed. Both MDE and the Army Corps of Engineers have either made preliminary or final determinations that they are not jurisdictional. And again, that information was also included with my staff report. A December 29th, 2021 sound study by Vibratech concluded that the noise generation by this use will not exceed residential daytime limits of 65 decibels or nighttime limits of 55 decibels at the property line per COMAR. And you can see by the yellow dots there, that's where the sound measurements were taken. Applicant indicates there will be an average of 74 truck trips per day, and trucks will continue to follow the approved route shown on the slide. Road improvements were done in 2016 and 2018. DPW has recently identified areas of wear along Carter Road and is requiring improvements as part of Phase 3 approval. And I don't know if we have anybody here from DPW or not. Yep, we do. They can help discuss that or answer any questions that you may have, as it wasn't shown where these improvements are on the submittal. This gives you an idea of what the end of life of this operation will look like. There'll be 4 ponds and 2 potential areas for home sites. And with that, that's the end of my presentation. I'd open it up to any questions or turn it over to these gentlemen up front.
Do you have any questions for him?
74 trips, is that 37 trucks or 74 trucks? Just curious.
Do you guys want to answer that? Probably better you answer that.
I believe it's 74 each
74
way.
loads a day.
Yeah, so the trucks have to come in empty. 74 will come in empty and 74 will leave loaded.
Okay,
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, excuse me.
quite all right.
Charles R. Shaler with Baker Donaldson, attorney on behalf of the applicant Bridgetown. Sean Callahan, who you all are probably very familiar with Lane Engineering. Jim Gothrop, Vice President of Aggregates Division. We're here, as Steve aptly put it, he's given you an overview of the operation. This is Phase 3. Many of you have seen Phases 1 and 2, so this may be somewhat redundant, and so we apologize. But for those that are new to it and have questions, we're here to have the conversation. I mean, we're an open book on this one. I think DPW and the applicant have worked well together, because Carter Road was one of the issues that was of initial concern. And you'll hear from the...
Sorry, I thought I'd turned the bringer on. That was Jim Barton, of all people.
Ears. Anyway, as you heard from Steve, we seek a favorable recommendation for Phase 3 for Bridgetown development here. We are looking to add parcel 21, 182 acres. We currently have an operation on site there. The property is ag zoned, therefore conditional use under 18.114C7 is required. The end reclamation is still up on the plan. We're going to have 4 ponds, 2 house sites. We were initially granted, and I'll just go through some of this for history, Phase 1 back in 2015. We came back and revised the hours of operation. We've been to the Board of Appeals twice, and for Phase 2, that was 2020. There's an active zoning permit on file here, the number Z16154. The life of the operation is expected at this point, should the Commission agree to give the favorable recommendation of the Board of Appeals, we're looking at 2054. So another plus or minus 30 years, depending on the supply and demand issues out there. As Steve pointed, we did do a sound study with Vibratech, who's used in Phases 1 and 2. We will be below the 54 decibel limit with the berms in place and the screening. So that's been addressed. Earth Data did a hydrologic study out there. Again, there's no adverse impact to adjacent uses that would impact farming out there. The haul road and the operations will remain as they are today, so there's no creep, if you will, or realignment. The operation that we have today, ingress and egress, is going to remain the same. We have a paved haul road going into the site, so there's very little, if any, debris on the road site, and we sweep it constantly out there. We've worked with STAC and staff here starting in July. Again, this is phase 3, so I don't want to say there are no issues, but generally everything was worked out in phases 1 and 2 for sure. This is just adding acreage out there at this point in time. The trucks are going to wind up leaving on Carter Road, taking the left, so that route will not change. We've worked with the county and through the Board of Appeals and staff. There are a series of conditions we're happy to adhere to and continue on. One of the new ones would be that we would agree to employ best management practices for water quality for the erosion sediment control to address whatever issue might be downstream on the sensitive species. DNR is secretive. They don't tell us if it's 100 feet away or it could be 2 miles away the way they write their letter. But we, as part of our ethos, is always best management practices anyway, so we don't see an issue with that. Simply at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jim, but we believe we meet the criteria in 18-195E. Page 18 to the site plan, the sheets that you have before it, walks through each one of the criteria. Sean here can go through each one of the criteria at some length, unfortunately, if the board needs to, but we're here to have the conversation. At this point, we would request a favorable recommendation. I'm going to turn it over to Jim Gothrop here, and he can hopefully not be as redundant because there is some overlap with his PowerPoint, and if there are any operational issues, Jim is certainly the person to ask. Jim, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Good to see you. I have hard copies if you'd like to look at them as we're going through the presentation,
Sure.
or you can. Okay. I brought a bunch of copies.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Jim, just let me know when you're ready to switch slides, and I'll switch it. Yep.
Thank you, John.
So Steve and Charles have done a great job of summarizing the project. Obviously, there's going to be some overlap, so I'll breeze through my slides here that Steve has done a great job of covering already. So go ahead with the next slide.
Can I
please.
ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Who are you again, and what do you have to do with the project?
Okay, I'm Jim Gothrop with Bridgetown Development. Okay, so we're the owner of the property and operator of the sand and gravel operation.
Where are you out of, Jim? Just curious.
Cecil County. We have York Building Products
Yes.
is our
I
company.
thought that was your company.
Yes. So we have 3 facilities up there that have been around since the 50s. And we came, looked for expansion opportunities down here in about 2013 or so, and have been at this site since 2016. Okay, yes. Okay, as previously discussed, this haul route, you can see where the operation is, just kind of southwest of Ingleside. When we originally started our operation, there was a concern of the Commission and Board of Appeals that road repairs could be a problem. So we agreed to restrict our truck traffic to Carter Road. So you can see that's that red line. So extensive repairs have been done to that road to make it, bring it up to standards for the truck sizes that we haul out of there. I just want to add that we do have a scale at this operation, so we scale the trucks before they leave, and they cannot leave our property if they're not under the state limit of 70,000 pounds for a triaxle truck or 80,000 pounds for a tractor trailer. So they're always going to be within the state requirements. So the road was stabilized to handle that kind of load. Next slide, please. This is part of that original plan. Can't very well read those notes, but that's a summary of the repairs that were done. Back in 2016, we worked with Department of Public Works to enhance the road in certain areas where DPW had thought that there would be potential areas for damage. So particularly was right in front of the operation where the trucks are turning, also the intersection of Rowe Ingleside Road where trucks are stopping and starting again. And then the curve down there, you can see where the school bus stop signs are. And we did extensive repairs, deep lift repairs there. And then out at State Road 19 there at that stop sign, we did some repairs. And then in 2018, it was apparent that there were more repairs needed. And so we worked again with the Department of Public Works to actually mill the outbound, the lane that goes north. So that's the lane that carries the heavier loads, right, the loaded trucks. We used a technology called soil cement, where they inject cement into the dirt that's underneath the road because there wasn't a lot of subsurface strength. You know, a lot of these county roads have been, bank run and then tar and chip, right? So we had 2 or 3 inches of tar and chip, but not anything really that could handle the traffic. So anyway, the soil cement is basically a method of taking 8 to 12 inches of soil underneath, combining it with cement, so it makes it more like concrete. It's not quite as strong as concrete, but it's strong enough to handle the loads that we are proposing. So that was done in 18, complete overlay also, and it's held up really well. There's maybe 3 areas that were patched, but it was just a mill and overlay where some deterioration occurred. There's an existing area right now that needs some repairs, and we're working with DPW on that. I believe Lee's here. Yes, Lee's here, so he'll come up and talk to you guys about a public works agreement that we are going to establish with them, because this is a long-term. I mean, as Charles said, it's a 30-year process. So we all know that roads have a life expectancy, and so we're going to work with them to make sure that the county is comfortable with the amount of additional truck traffic and the wear on that road, that the county is not having to support that 100%. Okay. Next slide. So this is a aerial from October. Okay, so it gives you a little better idea of what, most recently what it looks like. And you can see the pond area is expanded, and that yellow line is our current phase 1 and phase 2, and the blue line is the phase 3 operation. You can see in phase 3 that green swath across the bottom, that's a PDA, tax ditch. And we are proposing to move that southerly so that it's adjacent to L Downs Road, so it's not bisecting the property there. There's also those green swaths up towards the center of the property, which are also PDAs, and they would eventually be removed. Just in thinking about sand and gravel mining, some of you might not be as familiar as others. So when we mine, you can see this, that where the operation is expanding slowly. So the properties will continue to be farmed as we expand our mine area. Our intention is to continue mining within phase 1 and phase 2, and obviously if we're granted permission to mine the phase 3, then we would move into phase 3. So phase 3 really wouldn't be mined for several years, okay? But our proposal is that we would go ahead and do the tax ditch movement and build our berms and get them landscaped immediately so that the trees can mature and farming will continue on that parcel, as we expand. We had to take some precautions, I guess, or just procedures to make sure that the existing ditches and farmland could drain during the placement of those berms, right? Because you put berms all the way around, it's just going to hold water. That's not good for the farming. So we did leave some openings in the berms to allow for that. But that's the only breaks in the berms, if you will. Next slide, please. We've kind of talked about a lot of these things. There were 22 conditions that we all agreed to were placed on our permit at the beginning. We do have a host agreement with the county. I don't know if you all are aware of that, but we give the first 500 tons of material free each year.
Do they get that much?
Yes, they do. Yeah, and it's basically mostly for salting the roads, putting sand down on the roads. So it's concrete sand is our majority product. We have had some stray trucks. Okay, so I'll be honest with you, we had some complaints. But as soon as we get the complaint, we find out what truck it is. We talk to that truck driver and make sure that doesn't happen again. So over
what period of time?
That's over the 5 years. So it's been few. If we had 4 complaints, there are probably more trucks that did it, right? But we do police it, and we make sure that they stay on Carter Road.
What were they, speed complaints or Jake breaks?
It was actually they were taking a shortcut. They're driving like through Ingleside or L Downs Road, trying to, time is money, so they're trying to make it a little quicker, and we told them that's not allowed. So, okay, next slide. Here's Carter Road after we did that soil cementing and overlay in conjunction with Department of Public Works. Okay. Here's our entrance. Steve's pictures kind of mimic this. You can see the trees are pretty well established. Go ahead. Another one. Go ahead. This is our scale house. It's a small operation, small footprint, but there's a bathroom and septic system and an area for the truck drivers to come in. We have a dispatching office, that kind of thing. So go ahead. This is what our sand plant looks like. It's kind of typical of a sand plant. You have a processing plant. We use water to break up the clays and separate the clay out of the sand, and then the sand is graded so it meets the concrete sand specifications for our customers' needs, and then stockpiled, dewatered, and then we load it up. So a quick summary of our request. The Higgs property, phase 3 is 182 acres. We previously approved 110. We're requesting to increase the operation by 160. Total pond area at completion would be 182 acres. That would be those 4 ponds that Steve and Charles were talking about. And then the 2 building sites. Just want to reiterate, we're going to use the same scale house, the same scale, the same entrance, same truck traffic. So we're trying to impact the neighborhood as little as possible. Go ahead.
You haven't exhausted where you're mining, correct?
That's correct.
When is that supposed to?
That would be another 5 years for phase 1 and phase 2.
And you're on schedule with that?
This one is not legible, but in the lower left-hand corner is what they call best practices. Okay, so that was part of the DNR's letter to us saying that there are organisms that that are susceptible to silting, to silt. And so they want us to use best management practices when doing any construction work close to any streams. So that's part of the plans. Our contractor would adhere to those best management practices. And they, include, making sure that you have silt fence up, making sure that you stabilize the area with straw or matting and seed it as quickly as possible to get the root system established. So we certainly would do that. Okay?
Well, your history with the county's been great.
Thank you. This is the basically the end use plan. You can see there's just large ponds, and then a couple building sites. Okay, next. This was touched on, so I won't go over in too much detail, but some of you were here when we came before you and asked to extend our hours because our production is you can only produce so many tons per hour with the size plant and dredge that we have. So in order to produce more, the only thing you can do is work more hours, right? And so we came and asked permission to extend the hours from our original application. And that increased it to 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. during the week only, and during the summer, high peak hour, high demand hours. And so we are not changing that, but that changed the requirement for the decibels because of COMAR, because before 7 or after 9, you have to be, they call it nighttime hours, so it's a lower decibel reading of 55 decibels. And we have had Vibrotech come out and actually test it as we're operating to make sure that we're under that 55.
And you were under.
And we are.
Mm-hmm.
And then we asked them, as Steve shared with you, the drawing, they looked at the proposed areas and they selected some areas just to make sure that anywhere the dredge would be, we would always be below that 55, and found that we were. Just to remind you, the berms obviously provide acoustic baffling, if you will. The trees also help with that. A dredge floats on the water, and the water table is down probably 10 feet below the current ground level. So that also helps attenuate, because now your sound, what's creating the sound, is now down even lower than it would be if it was on top of the ground. Mm. So it's as I said in here, in effect, it's an 18-foot high sound barrier, which is pretty significant. The current dredge is equipped with what's called a hospital muffler. It's just an extra large muffler that baffles the sound, and it is obviously meets those decibel requirements. We are anticipating putting in an electric dredge, so this would take power from the grid and use electricity to drive the dredge pump. So there would not be a diesel motor. So that is going to be much quieter. It's also going to be more environmentally friendly because we're not using diesel fuel. It's power company generated, which is much more efficient.
3-phase there?
Yes, there is. Yeah, it's already 3-phase. Yes. And the dredge would, at its closest, actually the pond, edge of the pond would be at closest 450 feet from the nearest house. And there'd be a berm. And in that area, there's also the tax ditch relocation. So it's a significant distance. Next slide. This gives you an idea what the water elevation is versus, you can see the bank in the background. It's about a 10-foot drop there to the farm field. And then there's a 8-foot berm beyond that. Okay, next slide. Here just shows you some distances from the houses. The closest one is down that southwest corner, and the rest are over 1,000 feet away.
Do you know why water in sand pits is always bluish green?
It's the
Oh, I'm curious.
it's the fine, very, very fine particles reflect the light, Okay, so
Don't they precipitate down after a while?
eventually, but
long
because
as
it's
you're stirring it up.
exactly, it's a dredging operation, so it's and they're so fine they don't precipitate easily, so it takes a while. So we talked about conditions. There were, I think, 22 originally. In our proposal, our application, we had 26. And they are based on the original Board of Appeals wording. And what the Planning and Zoning Department has proposed are much more concise, but they do the same thing. It's all the 26 are condensed into the, I think it's 19 now is what they're proposing. So
Yeah,
we
19.
we agree to those conditions, and I'm glad to go over them if you want to talk about them individually. But we are in compliance with them, and we continue to comply with them. Is that it? Okay. Any questions for me?
Any questions?
I do, actually. Good to see you again, Mr. Gulthrop.
Hey, good to see you.
Most of these are operational. And can you speak to the efficacy of the grass haul road? I don't remember that being the case in the past, and if it is, then please remind me. But I just...
It's not a haul road, it's an access road.
Okay, so it's just described in the staff as a haul road, so that's not a triaxle road.
No.
That's just
No,
an internal pickup truck maintenance type of access road.
Right, because as you can imagine, with a dredge out on the water, you've got a pipe that goes to the dredge, so you have to move that pipe around.
Sure.
And there's cables so that the dredge can move, right? So it's pulling itself, and those cables have to be maintained. So, yeah.
That makes a lot of sense in my head. And then lastly, and I didn't see this in the staff report, is with respect to the landscape berms. In the past, this board has discussed, watering with a vehicle versus irrigation. Can you speak to how you plan to implement your new berms?
Well, we learned a lesson back in 2016 when we planted all those trees. We thought we could just do it by hand with a water truck, and you just cannot keep up that way. So we ended up putting a pump in and a drip irrigation system on the berm, and that really helped. I mean,
I want you to tell that story to every solar developer. Because they tell us that they can keep all the trees and plants alive by water trucks.
well, they can, but it's you have to do it every couple weeks. It's just not practical for us.
Well, you've got plenty of water sitting there.
Well, yeah, right.
We're fortunate on that side.
And once you, the drip irrigation is expensive, because it's basically a little tube that runs all the way around the property. But once you do it, you just turn the pump on, and it's dry for a couple weeks, you turn it on. It's, if it rains, you don't turn it on. So that's the way we've accommodated
Great,
that.
thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I guess I have a question, for Mr. Johnson, and I guess DPW. It was my understanding from Mr. Johnson that DPW identified, sections in the roadway that will need to be repaired. However, they're deferring until, I guess, the completion of phase 3, which sounds like that's 30 years from now based off the testimony we've received. Can either Mr. Johnson or DPW elaborate on that, please?
I think Lee's planning on coming up here, so if I could just, we are negotiating with them for a public works agreement that would take care of the maintenance of the Carter Road, Bridgetown Road, over that 30-year period. Okay, but we'll let him come up as soon
You're
as.
not waiting 30 years. You're going to maintain
Exactly,
it.
it's going to be ongoing, and we understand that.
As
It's-
you have been.
Yes, correct.
Can you come up?
Did you have anything you want to say?
Have him come right here. He can come here.
Jim, you can stay there. Lee can come up here.
Make sure that we're tap on that, make sure.
Morning.
Morning, Commissioners. Lee Edgar with Queen Anne's County Department of Public Works. Now, as been alluded during the presentations, at the time of the original Phase 1 approval, as with operations such as these, which involve trucks or equipment that put on significant stress on the roadways, we look at areas where improvements need to be made such that the roads can support that type of traffic. As it relates to hauling materials and things with heavy trucks, it's generally the areas that are of concern are intersections where the loaded vehicles are accelerating or decelerating, and then curves where there's those turning movements, and it puts extra strain on the road. We worked out areas that needed to be improved. It was the entire frontage of the property on Bridgetown Road, as well as the intersections on Carter Road with Maryland 19 and Ells Downs Road there, and as well as the curve. So those were the requirements for Phase 1. Those improvements were made and the bonds released. Subsequent to those improvements, but prior to Phase 2, we saw that there were some areas of the outbound where the loaded trucks were traveling. Some sections around the curve and the straight section there had shown some deterioration and distress. Though the developer had already exercised his commitment for Phase 1, we did approach him about, we need to make some repairs here. Will you share the cost with us? And the answer was quickly yes. We were very pleased with that. We made the repairs that I think Mr. Gothrop described very well with regard to the soil cement, where we built up the road base. Again, this is an old tar and chip road. We built that up and then put on an asphalt overlay. It's generally held up well. There are some areas that are deteriorating again, and that's going to happen. Pretty routine. It's not terribly bad, but because this application came in, the question became, what's the condition of the road? What needs to be done? So there are some routine repairs which will need to occur. We are working with Bramble to determine what the appropriate repairs will be and get a cost estimate. We will be working with the developer to have a cost share on taking care of some of those repairs. But in terms of the long term for Phase 3, as you can see, we made some appropriate upgrades, but beyond that, determining what areas of the base may, deteriorate or fail over time, it's very difficult to say. So the approach that we're going to work out is a public works agreement, wherein the applicant will enter into an agreement with the county, tentatively putting forth a certain number of dollars each year to a dedicated fund, which will be used to implement repairs to the haul route on an as-needed basis. And that seems to be the most appropriate means to continue what we've been doing and what has been working very well. So the short answer to the question is there are some areas that have worn. Those areas will be repaired this season, with the applicant. And over the long term for Phase 3, the plan is that have an agreement wherein he's contributing each year, putting money into a fund, and then that fund will be used to effect repairs on an as-needed basis.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Reese, are you satisfied?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. How about, can we get a resolution?
Public comment.
Public comment,
This is a public hearing after all.
yes. Any public comment?
None on virtual.
And appears to be none locally. Okay,
Now let's close the public hearing then.
close the public hearing and go back into,
Deliberations.
close the public hearing on this application, reopen the Planning Commission regular meeting session to hold discussion and conduct votes regarding this case.
Madam Chair, I move that the Planning Commission regarding the request by Bridgetown Development Company LLC for expansion to an existing major sand and gravel mining operation near Ingleside and is more particularly described in Department of Planning and Zoning File SP number 21-07-0078, hereby finds this concept plan is consistent with the purpose, goals, and objectives of the 2010 Comprehensive Plan and the Queen Anne's County Zoning and Subdivision Regulation, and grants concept plan approval.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So be it. And we need to do the recommendation to the Board of Appeals now, too. Can you do that one?
Okay. Madam Chair, may it be resolved that the Planning Commission regarding the request by Bridgetown Development Company LLC for expansion to an existing major sand and gravel mining operation near Ingleside and is more particularly described in Department of Planning and Zoning file SP number 21-07-0078, hereby forwards a favorable recommendation to the Board of Appeals under sections 18-1-14.c7 and 18-1-95-e with the following conditions to be addressed. Proper controls and methods are maintained to minimize truck mud tracking or dust plumes in dry times with wind drift suppression. The facilities continue to be adequately designed and maintained to free dirt and debris from the wheels and undercarriage of trucks prior to entering Bridgetown Road. A state water appropriations permit is maintained from the Maryland Department of the Environment. All soil conservation district approvals are maintained. All stormwater management plans are approved by the Queen Anne's County Department of Public Works. The hours of operation will be consistent with the approval of conditional use, case number CU-180500016. Any changes require additional approvals. All landscaping required shall be maintained to assure plantings remain alive and healthy during the operation period. The applicant provides a cash surety bond for all landscaping. Haul trucks shall adhere to the approved haul route as discussed and presented. The proposed height of storage piles not to exceed 45 feet. The applicant submits as-built updates to the BOA and the Department of Planning and Zoning on a schedule to be determined by the BOA and agree to an annual inspection. All state permits are in place prior to final permitting by Queen Anne's County. The site access road service shall continue to be maintained to support the imposed loads of fire apparatus and shall be provided with an all-weather driving surface. Any legal documents are reviewed and approved by the Planning Commission attorney. Any future mining phases or changes to the end-use plan must return to the Planning Commission for a recommendation to the Board of Appeals for an amendment to the conditional use. Any and all financial sureties for reclamation, landscaping, stormwater management, and enforcement, etc., are in place before final permits are granted. Shall be no truck parking on Bridgetown Road, no stacking or parking outside of the gate, no jake brakes, and no tailgate slamming either on-site or on the public road. The applicant shall post a sign with a notice regarding these restrictions. Any requirement by the Queen Anne's County Roads Department are satisfactorily addressed. Any additional comments or requirements from DNR regarding the landscaped berms and the stream buffer are addressed prior to the Board of Appeals hearing. And any outstanding documentation or comments stemming from agency reviews are addressed prior to the Board of Appeals hearing.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So be it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Gulton, before you leave, just a question about your state water appropriation permit. Is that just for wash water? What do you need water on? I'm curious.
It's both to de-water, so.
Oh, so you can discharge?
Right.
I see, okay.
So that the level of the water, because the dredge has a finite depth.
Sure.
And if the deposit dips, then we would like to be able to
Have
go
to
get
drop
it. Right,
DL.
right.
I see. Okay.
But also for the plant, there's makeup water they call it.
Clean wash
Yeah,
water.
yeah.
Got it.
So it covers both.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks very much.
Nice job.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, good, Jim. Good seeing you again.
See you, Charles.
John, are we cleaning up that area? In between? Yeah, I think so. Thank you.
This one. This one, God, you'll get you.
I can't hear you.
If you vote against this one, God will get you. Keep that in mind.
Okay, next we have the major site plan, Chester Hope Fellowship with Kevin Sheeran with DMS Associates. You ready?
Steve Johnson, County Planner with Queen Anne's County Planning and Zoning. We're here to discuss project number SP 20-06-0055, Hope Fellowship Church, for Chestertown Hope Fellowship, Inc. The proposal is to construct a 17,172 square foot church, and the applicant is requesting major site plan approval. An idea of where the project is located. It's located near Kingstown, up near the Royal Farms off of McGinnis Road. This is a parcel. It's currently an active agricultural field. There are no natural resources on site. The site is not located in critical area, and it's not located in the floodplain. Property is zoned SC, suburban or commercial. Nonprofit institutional uses are permitted uses in this zoning district. The proposed church can be seen there in yellow. The applicant is proposing 17,172 square feet of floor area and 95,469 square feet of impervious area. There is a future phase that includes a sanctuary, which would account for 7,200 square feet of floor area and 38,631 square feet of impervious surface. That includes the building, future building, and future parking lot outlined in purple. As you can see, the totals fall well below the maximum permitted for floor area and impervious once all phases are complete. Again, the church is in yellow. The associated parking is located directly to the east. 90 spaces are required for parking. The applicant is providing 116, and they are proposing to exceed the minimum parking requirements due to their current parking demands and potential for growth of the congregation. There are site amenities on site that are for church use only. They will not be rented out to the general public. They're highlighted in orange. That's 2 recreational fields, a play area, a proposed pavilion, and a fire pit. Forest conservation on site will be addressed by the planting of the afforestation area, which is the green area outlined in the southwestern portion of the site. I believe there'll be 395 trees planted inside that area.
Mr. Johnson, before you go on, sorry, can you speak to the parking enumeration? Does that 116 count for the future, or does that count for simply what they're looking to implement currently?
That's what they're going to implement currently.
Okay, so that 116 would, if the purple phase in the future
Add to that.
would add to that. Thank
Correct. Yep, no problem. This gives you now a look at what the building will look like. What you see here at the top is what you would see from McGinnis Road. The bottom picture there is looking west from the parking lot. Top picture there is the rear of the building looking north. Middle is looking east with your back towards the west. The bottom picture there gives you an idea of what the pavilion would look like. And here are a few renderings of what the site might look like once it's complete. And with that, I'll answer any questions or turn it over to the applicant.
Any questions? Kevin?
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you, Steve. My name is Kevin Sharon with DMS and Associates. With me is Pastor Josh Rendulic.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
As Steve indicated, we are seeking major site plan approval. The church bought the property in April of 2016 and has been fundraising and planning and looking forward to this project for quite some time since that time, and they actually nicknamed it the Field of Dreams. I think that was noticed on the architectural renderings. So in 2018, the church hired DMS and Associates and Torchio Architects to design the site plan and the building. Some of it will be done in phases. The majority of the main building will be done first with the parking lot. And I do want to point out that this site was the former site of what the Walmart had been under contract for some time. So the use here on 544 will certainly be less than what was anticipated back prior to 2016. As Steve pointed out, the proposed church is a little over 17,000 square feet. The overall property is a little over 26 acres, zoned agriculture. The current Hope Fellowship Church is just outside the corporate limits of Chestertown, opposite Washington Square Shopping Center where Highs and McDonald's is. And to the parking question, we did, as we were going through review with staff, they were questioning some of the extra parking, and so turned out that just by looking at a Google snapshot from, I think this was 2016 or 18, that this was caught on a Sunday morning. There were 74 parking spaces in their parking lot, and there are cars seen going up and down the travel lane trying to find a place to park. So the code calls for a little over 60 parking spaces. The way the site kind of laid out in the bays, it wound up being about 116 parking spaces. And, you know, hopefully they would need the extra spaces shown in purple. But for now, we feel like there's sufficient parking for the use and for the need of the church. Access will be off 544. We have received conditional approval from State Highway. We just need to provide the cost estimate and provide the surety, and then that will be approved. That permit will be approved. All other permits or approvals, conditional approvals from DPW and planning have been received in terms of stormwater management, afforestation, landscaping, and the like. You can see in the middle, underneath the orange athletic fields, is the septic area that was previously designed and approved when Walmart was looking at the property. So they'll be utilizing a portion of that. And then the green in the bottom left is the almost 4 acres of afforestation that's required. So we are, again, seeking major site plan approval for this church, and would open it up for any questions that you guys might have.
Any questions? And then a resolution?
Comment, please.
Public comment? Any public comment? No virtuals, no local? Resolution?
Madam Chair, may it resolve that the Planning Commission regarding the request by Chestertown Hope Fellowship, Inc. for a proposed major site plan identified as Hope Fellowship Church to construct a 17,172 square foot church is more particularly described in Department of Planning and Zoning File SP number 20-06-005. Hereby finds this major site plan is consistent with the purpose, goals, and objectives of the 2010 Comprehensive Plan and the Queen Anne's County Zoning and Subdivision Regulation, and hereby grants major site plan approval subject to the following conditions. The buildings are constructed consistent with the architectural elevations provided for approval. Any remaining edits and/or documents required by the Department of Public Works, Planning and Zoning, or other reviewing agencies be reviewed and approved. Any required legal documents must be approved, signed, and recorded prior to obtaining final signatures for the major site plan. All required estimates, bonds, sureties, review and inspection fees must be submitted to the Department of Public Works and the Department of Planning and Zoning as appropriate, and all required signatures must be obtained.
I have one correction.
I'm sorry.
The zoning file number was SP 20-06-0055. You left the second 5 off.
I'm so sorry. If I may amend my motion to reflect that correction. It's Planning and Zoning File number 20-06-0055.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So be it.
All right, thank you for your time.
Welcome.
Welcome to Queen Anne's County.
Thank you.
And now we're gonna take a break.
Thanks, Steve. I'm gonna push this forward, John. I think Stephanie's gonna sit up here.
reconvening in a comprehensive plan work session. This work session is being held specifically to consider the actionable items received during the 60-day public comment period on the county comp plan and the Kent Narrows Community Plan. The county commissioners and planning commission members received and reviewed the comment document for consideration in advance of the joint work session held on Tuesday evening. If you submitted a public comment which was not addressed during the work session, then you will have an opportunity to offer additional comments during the public hearing, which will follow this work session. In the interest of efficiency, we ask that you not repeat comments considered during the work session during the public hearing. So that being said, I would like to take these as groups. The group for recommendation, editorials, and clarification only. I think that's been pretty well self-explanatory. Is there any questions on this or discussion? Otherwise, I'd like to have a motion that we accept it as is.
So moved.
Second?
Hold on a second. Hold on a second. What?
I thought we were just gonna do consensus for each one as we went through, and then vote at the end.
Well, there's 3 groups.
No, there's 3 groups. We're doing each group separately.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Not
We're not
33
voting on
in the substantive section.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'll second.
Okay, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that's taken care of. The next one is Amy here? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking all over for you, right in front of me. Oh, my. The next one is the no changes needed and no changes proposed. But there are a couple comments that you would like to make.
I would. Through the public comments that we received and some additional input, there were 3 comments that we had included in the no changes needed or proposed that we would like to address.
Is one of them Peter Johnson?
No,
Number 7?
no.
Okay. Go ahead. What is it?
So the first one is number 89 on page 13 of 31. This is specific to a recommendation in the Environmental Resources chapter.
Hold on one second. Yeah, can you wait? We need to get organized.
Oh, Barry Waterman.
It's this one. Looks like it's been in the wash.
Yep.
Snowed up.
It got snowed on. Okay. 89?
Yes.
Yeah, 89.
Well, you're...
On page 13 of 31.
94. All right, did you hand out magnifying glasses with
Oh, God.
Oh, I brought my reading glasses.
I got that. Okay. 89.
Okay, this recommendation outlines that exceeding impervious surface limits will be considered, but it doesn't set what those parameters might be or what specific guidance we would use in terms of establishing thresholds in terms of impervious surface limits in watersheds. So what we suggest is to add to that recommendation a clarification that those standards would be established through Maryland Department of the Environment, just so that it's clear that
Well, that's kind of like the way it is anyway, right?
yeah, but that's the implication, but without stating it clearly, it could be open to interpretation or the
Differently.
submittal of different thresholds. So we just want to make sure that any threshold that we use is consistent with our standing stormwater practices as established through our watershed implementation plans. And
Okay.
Amy, would we potentially say that the county wouldn't implement anything more stringent than the Department of the Environment? Because, I mean, if a developer's counting on that guideline, they want to know which guideline they're gonna live with. Is that-
Correct. It's so that we are connecting that strategy to a known entity, to a known quantity. Yeah.
Okay, and the other one?
Okay, there are two more. The other is on page 23 of 31.
Number?
And it is item number 186 and 187. They are similar comments that were really submitted by the Bay Area Association of Realtors, and then a group of realtors and collectively. This strategy is specific to the moderately priced housing fund, and what is explained within the text of the housing chapter is under the moderately priced housing fund, there's a general explanation. But the last sentence in that explanation specifies that, I wanted to make sure I'm looking at the right thing, specifies that the county will look at additional tax incentives, or taxes, and in speaking with our housing authority, Mike Clark, that extra language is not necessary. What we decided would be more appropriate is to just reiterate the moderately priced dwelling unit recommendation language that is in goal number 9-1 S1 recommendation 4, which looks at ways to make sure that we are strengthening and making more accessible our moderately priced development unit program, and not outlining that we're looking to increase a tax based on that program. So it leaves it much more open and just making the program more accessible and viable.
Okay. Are there any questions on that? Jeffrey? Okay.
And the last point of clarification that I'm aware of is on page 24, and that is items number 192 and 193, which are repetitive. There is a table within the housing chapter that is generated by the state, and it outlines different state programs, and specifically it identifies the rental program and calls out a need to consider expanding the rental licensing program. The county does not have a rental licensing program, and there are concerns about this table living within our comprehensive plan and the ramifications of that policy suggestion. I confirmed with Mike Clark of our housing department that this chart is in no way connected to a need to document information for funding sources or grant applications, and it really is not applicable to the county in a short-term or long-term fashion, and so we suggest that we delete that table.
How long's that table been in there?
This is the first appearance of that table or any information
And it
that
came from where?
It's state information that was included really to better explain the state's housing program and various options. So it's more informational. And if it's an informational chart that might cause concern, then it's in the best interest of the community to remove it if it's concerning more than it's explanatory.
Nothing like muddy in the waters.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
Those are the three.
Any questions on that issue? Okay. With those, do I need a proposal to accept those changes?
We accept this.
As amended?
Yeah.
This group as amended? No changes needed and no changes proposed, with the exception of the changes she just mentioned. May I have a,
We're not voting to approve this whole packet.
yes, we are. This is for the changes, no changes needed section. We just did the first
Additional
section.
matters that you wish to discuss in there, now's the time to do it.
Yeah. Are there any things here you want to discuss? Because this was no changes, this is, everything's been okayed by everybody.
Well,
Just clarification
Okay,
before I make the motion.
Just for the,
I wanted to be sure what I was making the motion of.
and just for your information and the public's information, much of the information that is contained in this this chart are suggestions that were made or comments that were made. Some of them were simply comments, and some of them were questions, and we were able to redirect and show where we had addressed the issues that were raised.
Right.
Mostly these were clarifications as well.
In many cases, they were just in another chapter or a different page
Yeah.
that wasn't exposed to the commentor.
right. So can I get a
Motion,
motion?
motion to approve,
Second?
As amended?
amended.
As amended, right.
Correct.
Second?
Okay.
Did you get that, Chair? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So be it.
Madam Chairman,
Now the one for discussion. Yes, sir.
may I ask a question?
Sure.
I'm not sure what we're doing here right now, to be perfectly honest. What are we doing with these comments? What are you gonna do now that we've just approved something? What are we doing?
So, of the 418 comments that were received through the official 60-day review period, we addressed each and every comment in terms of where that information could be found, what changes we were going to make. So in the no changes document, we did not intend to make any changes other than the 3 we've just clarified. These are all explained.
Wait a minute, back up. Changes to the draft that the Planning Commission has reviewed most recently in October? Most recently in October. So these are changes to the draft presented to the Planning Commission and considered by the Planning Commission in October, before the document was sent out for 60-day review.
Thank you. Yep, that's good to
The
note.
context is clear.
Just, sorry, I'm slow.
It's okay.
These changes, we agreed to make 3 of them. That will change the draft that we saw in October, you all saw in October?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
With the 3 changes,
I thought you just said we were gonna make 3 changes.
yes, the 3 changes, yes. The 3,
There are
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm just trying to
3 out of
understand what we're
100
doing.
something.
right, 3 out of the 100 and something.
Okay.
And now, in the first motion, we looked at comments that we saw did need clarification, and we proposed changes. So that 60-day review draft that this board approved for public comment, those, we will also be making all of these changes in the draft. And for some of the changes that definitely were editorial, I know that Lauren and her staff have been busily keeping up with these changes so that they're not trying to update this draft within a 6-day period, that we're going to turn it around to the county commissioners, we hope. So these,
Category number 1 is editorial changes that do not change anything of substance.
Right.
Okay?
Define substance.
Oh,
these are
my goodness.
clerical, editorial, grammar, fixing typos, identifying, clarifying language, to clarify intentions, things of that nature. And then the last piece of the puzzle is the comments that we received, and we largely agreed with all of the proposed changes, which were more substantive than just clarifications, but we agreed with the general comments by and large. and outlined the ways in which we thought these comments should be dealt with in terms of edits to that draft. Aside from really 5 actionable items that we asked for the Planning Commission to consider, 4 of those items are specific to discussing adequate public facilities ordinance, because we know that that's a long-standing debate. So your next discussion is going to focus on more substantive changes, although I will clarify, as we did in the joint meeting, we did not receive any additional comments during the 60-day review to the comments that we already received during this whole public process over the last few years. So there weren't any new issues that were raised during 60-day review that we didn't kind of already know that we would want to address.
Which brings us to,
So, may I ask a question, please?
yes?
So, all the, comprehensive rezoning requests, are those being handled separately, or are they all part of these, comprehensive, or part of the, recommendations?
They come later.
I'm glad you asked that question. Those have already been voted upon, and the comprehensive rezoning requests now sit with the county commissioners, and that will be their decision. We did receive an additional request outside of that review period, which will have to be really dealt with by the county commissioners, and this board may or may not choose to make recommendation. But this board's role in reviewing all of the comprehensive rezoning requests has concluded.
Okay, thank you. So I just wanted to make sure that the votes that we took back in September, October still are relevant based off the Planning Commission's votes, and now they are in the County Commissioner's hand for further evaluation.
Yes, and there were no issues that were raised relative to any of the text of the comprehensive plan that really have an impact on the nature of those comprehensive rezoning requests. Otherwise, we would have called those out for reconsideration. So everything is still consistent with your vote.
Thank you.
And then the last section, which will be our time-consuming section, is the recommendations for Planning Commission consideration. Do we have, are there any comments or questions about that at this moment? Because we have 5 of them that need to have discussion out of the, how many? 33. 5 of them need discussion out of the 33. 27 of them have pretty much, or 28 of them have pretty much been handled. But we can talk about any one of them other than the 5. And the 5 being 4A, B, C, and D, and 9. No, it's not 9. What is it?
14.
9A on page 4. Are there any that you want to discuss out of the 28 that are not included in those numbers?
I mean, could I ask a favor, Madam
Sure.
Chair? If we, I know like the first, 1, 2, 3, the first several were, pending DES comment. Do we have DES comment? Like, I just want to,
Okay,
rather
sure.
than if this stuff was pending, I do have a couple questions on a few. I don't mean for us to go down
No, it's
each
fine.
one
That's
by
fine.
one, but just to clarify. So I have a question. So DES, did they come back with a comment to address
We did.
Mr. Goodchick's
Staff
comments?
tracked down all of those items, and I can let Stephanie address those.
So we reached out to the Sheriff's Office, Department of Emergency Services, and also the Department for the Fire Chief. Basically, all of those things that they've mentioned in those first 4 comments, challenges, threats, trends, and needs for all 3 of those departments are all addressed in their own kind of departments and plans that they're required to do or matrices that they kind of use to move forward. So if you see it needed that we need to put something like that in the comp plan, obviously we can, but those details are already addressed basically within their own departments.
Okay.
Could we note that somewhere? You know, if you want more information, go to X or something like that, so that people aren't, you know, constantly calling to ask
Or
where
feel
that
like
might be,
they're being
or feel that it
ignored.
was somehow left out.
Well, there are,
Remember, this is a land use document.
right, yeah.
Very
and
detailed to put something like that, maybe.
It is too much detail for the comp plan, and we had the same conversation, say, with the Economic Development Commission, who wanted to include some of their strategic planning chat sections as well. And really, the comp plan is not the place to hold that level of information. You don't want that level of specificity. So it's really best to just note to the commenter that these are all good points, and all of these agencies have means of addressing their own needs assessments. Otherwise, we'd have to mention it for all numbers of boards. So it's kind of just best to get back to that commenter with our response, and we'll update the spreadsheet accordingly.
Do you have any other?
No, if we want to move on to, oh, wait a minute, I do
Oh, I
further
wanna-
in the
I wanna
document.
try-
Oh, you want to
Get
go?
rid of the 28 if we can.
Okay.
That's okay.
On number 6A, we have indicated that the Planning Commission may wish to revise language. Is that something we need to discuss, or I don't see a need to revise the language?
Staff identified that the concern raised is addressed in the growth management strategy that is included on page 4-13 and 14. So staff feels that this comment is already addressed.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I guess it's fair to point out that we received a lot of really good comments from Shore Rivers, and a lot of their comments were very specific to specific implementation and best management practices. And again, the comprehensive plan doesn't really get into that level of detail, but in many cases, because of the requirements of the water resources element, a lot of the details that some of the environmental organizations who have offered comments, some of those details actually do live in the water resources element. So a lot of their comments in terms of getting more specificity really do reside in the water resources element.
And then 19, 20, 21, and 22. I guess if I could just get a brief explanation for your recommendations, I would appreciate it. The first one being green infrastructure should be listed as a specific action and strategy that the county should implement whenever possible.
Wait a minute, which one are you doing?
Number 20, I'm sorry. 19, 20, 21, and 22.
Where are you getting the information about the green?
Number 20 in the middle column here.
Right.
So I guess guess what a specific question there is that getting too much in the weeds for the comprehensive plan as we've addressed other comments? It's a question. Because the recommendation is to revise the language with regard to green infrastructure, as noted by the commenter.
So backing up to 19,
Yep.
which is relative to dredging, I think that clarifying that threats to the natural environment could inadvertently affect fisheries in terms of dredging. That generally is a part of a dredging application to review habitat protection areas. So we felt that adding a note to that effect is consistent with standard practice and would do no harm to clarify in the comp plan. The green infrastructure, let me reread that.
I guess my concern with that is it says should implement whenever possible, and what is the determinant of whenever possible, and who determines that, and I don't know, I just feel it's a little fuzzy, and maybe doesn't belong in the comp plan.
So the DNR's green infrastructure program, which is the way I've interpreted this comment to include, we look at hubs and corridors that are established by the Department of Natural Resources, and during project review, it is common for staff to review those data layers to look for if, say, there's a forest conservation requirement, and a developer puts forward a plan in terms of where they intend to afforest on site. If we can make sure, and by cross-referencing our green infrastructure maps, that afforestation is happening to maximize where we see gaps in those hubs and corridors, that is my interpretation of this request, and it's something that we would do, and it is a best practice. So I didn't take umbrage with the thought of this revision, but we're open to your criticism. That's why it's, input, I meant to say. That's why it's on this sheet.
Well, to build on that, Amy, does this create a different barrier for a developer to, is it something else they have to check another box off on, where if they complied with the state guideline or, something else in the county, does this create a barrier for doing the development, that they have to try and figure out what they're complying with here that might be different than what the state guideline was?
Let's back up a bit. There's nothing in the comp plan that requires compliance with.
Okay, I just want to clarify that, Chris. I want to be sure that,
But if
that
we
we're not
include
creating barriers.
something that is in the nature of a regulation, that is not a good idea in a comp plan. So I don't know, I can't read it, so it's. So
To that one and maybe blow it up so that
we shouldn't include regulatory language in the comp
it's
plan.
number 20 on page
It doesn't
6.
really define green infrastructure, so the bottom line for me on number 20, I'd like to sort of disagree with revising any language
Can you move it over?
that would make the statement, is my
Can
feeling.
you read it now?
I can't.
Green infrastructure is defined by the Department of Natural Resources, and so that's the resource we would use. I'm not sure if our code defines green infrastructure.
No.
I don't think it does.
Yeah.
It's a specific action. See, I don't agree with the last sentence. There's nothing that should be specific in a comp plan.
Right.
If it's specific and the zoning code is not as specific, then the comp plan becomes the regulatory document.
And that becomes my concern. I want to be sure that we're not doing something that creates a barrier that, somebody says, well, here's another thing that you have to do, and, there's enough protection, I think, in the system without making this that type of document.
Okay, we will not change that. If you all agree.
Motion or something?
Do the motion.
Just
Yeah, I
do
was
it
like-
all? Okay.
And then, Amy, on 21, I could just ask you to expound upon the reasoning behind revising the language as requested by Shore Rivers in a public comment, number 21. Again, it would be predominant land use in the county is, and it's talking about agricultural best management practices should be included as recommendation. And I kind of got the same feeling as the prior one, that it's a bit of a specific recommendation that.
Yeah,
I don't-
and this does happen. I mean, this, implementing agricultural best management practices is a part of every agricultural nutrient management plan and farm management plan. I mean, it's a standing practice.
That one doesn't work.
Okay.
So calling it
It's
out,
not a standing practice, it's required by law.
right, it's a
All
required,
We
right.
file nutrient management
Yes.
plans every year, we do implementation reports, we do everything what we're supposed to do,
Correct.
okay?
So this is kind of,
I think it also provides support then to anyone that's applying for a grant that is a best management, or an agricultural best management practice, so it kind of gives them a little bit more support.
Thank you very much. I accept that. And then the last one is the further licensing to, for installation and inspection of septic systems.
which number are you on?
It's the last one, and it's number 22.
Oh, okay.
And I feel like it's particularly, you've addressed, I want to make sure, I think that your recommendation is in line with my feeling is that there's enough licensing hoops to jump through, in addition to MDE, developing a further license for septic system inspectors. So just want to clarify that your recommendation would be not to require a further licensing hoop.
I can take that one, since I spoke with the health department. That is, if you look in the notes column, that is what the health department does now. The plumbing board are the ones that review those licenses, so it's just stating in the plan that that's what already happens in the county.
Great. Number 28. From the Historic Sites Consortium. The commentor has suggested, quote from the commenter, "Best practice in historic preservation is to build enough time in the process for concerned parties to consult with and advise owners on alternatives to property demolition." So my question / concern there is, I just feel like it muddies the waters if you have purchased or acquired a historic property and are getting ready to demo it for demolition. Is it just allowing more language for the owner, or is it, how would you revise the language on that one? I guess, I just want to make sure that someone who acquires a property has acquired a permit to demolish a defined historic property, that they're not going to be held up from doing that by having to consult with others who may want to dissuade them from doing so.
The comment that Nancy Cook made was specific to changing the language to be less intrusive. So, and I don't have the draft in front of me, so. Oh, thank you. All right, so where am I? Oh, this font's a lot easier to read.
Yeah, it's called 14.
Okay, page 9. Right. So what Nancy Cook has suggested is to change that language, which currently reads as such. Best practice in historic preservation planning is to build enough time in the process for outside parties to intervene and persuade the owner not to demolish or to buy the property, and in all likelihood for resale to the preservation-minded buyer. As Nancy Cook has been a long-standing member of our historic structure review team, I think she felt that a statement that is this strong is counterproductive to the collaborative efforts that they have been undergoing to work with property owners. So her request is to soften that language to ensure that there's adequate time to collaborate and not to be as directive.
I appreciate that, thank you. Okay, and my last one, the very last comment.
Number 33?
Number 33. Mentioning the commentor,
About COVID?
yeah, we urge the county to consider. I guess I would like an explanation on your recommendation on this one as well, please. Clarification, rather.
Scroll over so we can see the notes, please. Who's in charge of this? Oh, there we go.
Not you.
Okay.
So I guess my question is, from the commentor, is the person who's commenting requesting that if you have a plan that comes before you for an office building or whatever, that because more people are working from home, that be a consideration, that says more people are staying at home, it means more water is being used and more wastewater generated, I guess, in the home. So are they looking to, I'm trying to express myself clearly, for any home development, are they going to say, well, more people are working from home, so you're taxing the wastewater treatment system more, and they want that built into the plan? Because that I would have some strong objection to. But I want to be clear that how I'm interpreting it is correct.
That was my interpretation of the comment that was submitted, was that with more people working from home, there's going to be increased usage of water coming in and going out, I guess, and that the county should look at that when they are looking at capacity planning efforts.
I find that I wrote a big no on my sheet here. I have an objection to that. If you could, in my neighborhood, not many people have changed their habits just because
And
of
you
the
have
demographics.
update chapter 8, so how are you planning on updating it?
Yeah, I would not be a fan of including any language like that in the comprehensive plan.
I think the
I don't know
update,
why it would be in the comprehensive plan, but go ahead.
In chapter 8 right now, it does discuss teleworking implications a little bit. It doesn't go into the depth of the water and sewer, though, to that much of a degree. It just discusses a little bit, basically the trend from COVID-19 a little bit. I think they're just, like you said, they're asking for something a little more of saying, can we change our water and sewer rates
you're
or
not
something
changing it,
along
right?
those lines. It doesn't get to that degree in chapter 8. It just talks about COVID-19 and more people working from home, and it's on page 26 if you're
So
looking
are you
at it.
planning on revising the language like it says in the comments?
No, I think the plan there was just to address a little bit of the more implications of teleworking, not necessarily get into the means of water and sewer. Just if, people have to have internet, nothing by the means of the water and sewer rates. That's too far, obviously. We wouldn't want to include that.
That's also something for the sanitary commission to deal with it.
It's a little in the weeds.
And if flows change and they can identify the changes in flows because people are staying home more, then that might impact the gallons per day that are assigned to houses or apartments or so on and so forth. That's not a land use issue.
Right, exactly.
Right now, it just talks about basically the pluses and minuses of teleworking for basically in the economic chapter, nowhere else with water and sewer or the water resources
But it
element.
says here you're going to update chapter 8. To
So
include.
I think a little bit more detail of, if it is needed as far as,
Well, we don't think it does.
okay. Not to include the water and sewer. Yeah, I agree with you on that. It should not go to that specific level.
All right, so out of the 33.
Doing no change for that.
Yeah.
Sharon?
We have some amendments. Yes, sir?
Okay, well, I have a question too, if that's okay.
Okay, go ahead. Sure.
All right, so based on a conversation you and I had the other day, and some comments from at least three citizens from the county, and a conversation I had this morning, particularly reference comments 7 and 9, and the sewer capacity. Can you expand on that a little more? I look at your comments, you want to add a recommendation, but, what is the recommendation? How does it read? And the concern that I have is that I think we're going to be asked to vote on this without seeing it.
We brought the proposed language. So I'm glad you brought that up. So let me explain that journey that we were on. Obviously, this county, as we've discussed, has been the first that we know of in the entire Chesapeake Bay watershed who has been all of the jurisdictions subject to the nutrient caps. In terms of the state of Maryland, Queen Anne's County is the first county to deal with this issue in its comprehensive planning. And we think that might be true for the whole watershed. So this was quite an exercise that we all went through together. In doing that, we had a lot of technical committee meetings led by Alan Quimby, who's our Public Works Director, and our county administrator, Todd Mon, and all of the staff, and also a lot of conversations with MDE looking for guidance on how best to proceed. So a result of those conversations has been to look at both short-term and long-term options for our wastewater treatment plan on Kent Island. The obvious short-term step is to work through the re-rating process to see what types of additional flow the plant can realize. And then the second option was generated, which addresses long-term options. And those long-term options look at a lot of the usual suspects that a lot of citizens have raised in terms of what those what expansion might look like, including potential for spray irrigation, potential for direct injection, potential for nutrient trading, and the like. And we talked to the Department of the Environment about just those items. Some of them are very large ticket items, and some of the items have been met with limited success throughout the state. But nevertheless, the county is committed to looking at all of those options to see how best the plant might be expanded in the future. So when we had noted in the recommendations in the comprehensive plan, because we'd all been working on it so much, we felt that what we had outlined in the strategies was very clear. And as the comments came in, we realized it wasn't as clear as it might be. So Alan Quimby worked on some amendments to those recommendations that expressly state the options that the county will pursue, and then adding those options to the water resources element so that it's clear to all that the county is committed to investigate the conundrum that we found ourselves in. Secondly, and importantly, comments are made with great regularity that the market is changing. Our commercial uses and our residential needs are changing. We have an affordable housing crisis. So we have a lot of challenging scenarios converging all around our infrastructure. A part of how we would like to address that and setting this comprehensive plan up to guide the county to do that is to, number one, absorb the community plans back into the comprehensive plan, aside from the Kent Narrows development, aside from the Kent Narrows community plan. And mainly, there were so many zoning districts that were born out of those community plans, which are good plans. We want to retain those best parts of those plans and those development strategies, but we want to streamline them. We want to make them more consistent. We want to incentivize infill development where we do have capacity and infrastructure. We want to encourage redevelopment of sites. We heard that very consistently. So the kind of the threefold approach to streamline zoning, as really well illustrated by the residents of Graysonville, to prioritize infill and redevelopment, and by looking at short-term and long-term options. We feel that we have addressed the comments 7 and 8, and 7 and 9, and we can share with you. Did you bring it? What that would look like in the plan, what that language looks like. We haven't drafted everything to share you, to give you sneak previews, but this is one that Alan did work with us to complete, to show you. I guess if you can show them the...
This one or the...
Yeah, that's fine.
Can we get a paper copy of this?
Yes. Mm-hmm. How about this, the clean
red
one,
line,
I think?
the clean one, okay.
Mm-hmm. But we'll walk you through it. So as currently stated, actually I can't read it that way. Can I look at the original on there? Thank you. Okay. As currently stated, and we're on Strategy 2, Recommendation 1, and that is Resolution 0468 should be updated to clearly address the current sewer capacity limitation and define timeframes and reservations for the use of all remaining permit capacity. So we suggest just noting that the sewer portion of the allocation policy, known as Appendix 1 of the 2011 Water and Sewer Plan, should be amended to clearly address the current sewer treatment capacity limitations. And those are the affirmations that exist, but adding an affirmation to recognize the location and large amount of approved but unbuilt residential development that can be constructed to full build-out using existing capacity commitments. Second is we've added a recommendation to pursue with the Department of the Environment a 10% re-rating in the existing plant capacity as a short-term measure to address treatment capacity.
If you're reading what exists,
No, I'm reading what's new.
That's not up here.
Right.
Just what
Or
came, that's what just
is
came
it
up.
up there? I'm sorry.
Yeah, she just changed it over.
Okay, sorry.
So we're expressly stating as a strategy that we're looking at re-rating and referring to it as option strategy number 1 to be added to the water resources element. We are also committed to a third strategy to perform an analysis of options to construct new treatment capacity to address new treatment capacity limitations on a long-term basis, to refer to strategy number 2 contained in the water resources element, and then looking specifically at evaluating, considering a cost analysis of each option and the viability of each option of the existing nutrient allocation as determined by the current TMDL regulations, a regulatory analysis. The evaluation should also consider potential growth available to ensure the servicing of the department incurred by the expansion. And then the other strategies are the same. So we're specifically outlining those steps within these strategies. It would have really manifested itself in the water and sewer plan, as Mr. Drummond would point out. That's really where it belongs. But because this is such an important key issue and significant, has had such a significant impact on this comprehensive plan, we feel that it's appropriate to expressly outline these steps within the land use chapter's goals and recommendations. This will also allow us to, if we achieve these goals in an earlier time frame, this will allow us to reopen this comprehensive plan, to make those amendments if we get, if we find positive results before our 5-year update. So this clearly outlines for the Department of the Environment that we're actively engaged in exploring the county's options.
So when did this come about? In November, December, when?
Did what come about?
The new writing?
They came about as a result of the 60-day review comments that we received when we realized that these recommendations weren't as clear as we had intended them to be.
So that was in 9A that we were going to discuss, correct?
Yes, I believe you're right, Sharon.
Yeah.
9A.
No, that was the trash one.
Yeah, 9A is the trash collection.
Yeah.
So this change didn't come about anywhere on here. I'm confused.
Yeah,
You
no,
have to help me out here.
this is the suggested change. This is the way we suggested to address those comments.
But when did we get copies of this?
You haven't.
Review.
You haven't. This is a part of the suggested draft update, is that we update our draft as we describe. We just happen to have the sample for your information. Like all of these updates that we suggest, we know what they need to be and have drafted them, but we don't have them all ready for you to review right now. This one we do.
When will we have the opportunity to review that and vote on it?
That goes, you're voting on, you're greenlighting all of these changes so that when it goes to the county commissioners, they have these changes.
So when do we have the opportunity to see all the changes?
You do not. The point
You
is
do not.
You do not.
How can we recommend that to the commissioners if we haven't seen it?
So this is the process. The 60-day review you've agreed to. We received comments that we're reacting to. We're agreeing to all of these edits as we've outlined them. And if you're in agreement with the edits, we're making those edits and then conveying that final draft with the edits that you've agreed to the county commissioners. So that is the draft, that is the final draft. It doesn't come back to you. You're agreeing to the changes.
Which are described in the right-hand columns
Okay.
I'm sorry.
of the spreadsheet.
I'm thinking this might be a pretty significant page, right? As far as the future of the county, you have a significant document that you went for 60-day public comment, and now you have this significant page.
It's
with
not-
lots of interested parties that
It's not
will
a
be affected.
significant change. It's a clarification of what we had discussed in
You don't
public.
feel it should be open to public comment to get some?
It will be open to public comment when it gets to the county commissioners. It'll be open for public comment on the 25th of January.
And and this morning, during the public hearing.
It's another 60 days, I think, right?
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Until March 25th.
Yeah.
Then my understanding is, Madam Chair, that on the far right column, where I had a few questions on what the staff and Wallace and Montgomery had suggested, but otherwise I see a summation of the revision that you're going to make, and I trust that there'll be technical language or other language in there, but the gist of the change will be what you have
That's right.
enumerated here, and I
Shouldn't be any surprises because what is being proposed to be changed is set forth in the far right column.
I have a comfort level with that. And then, Bill, with this one, I think that what the Bay Area and some of our other realtors were asking just for a couple of clarifications or putting some points home that the county was going to, rather than saying, we have no sewer capacity, ... that to add that, but this is what the county is doing. And then about the direction of water and sewer to commercial and infill, just clarifying that, which I am assuming that that the commenters have some comfort with the changes that are being made, is my assumption. But I'm sure at the public hearing, which will follow this, we will hear if they do not.
Well, to be clear here, I'm not trying to be argumentative with you. I'm just.
No, I understand.
I'm just, that's a pretty significant 2 pages.
Well,
I
but
think. And,
in truth,
there's some parties here. There will be a moment for public comment on this. I
Yeah,
assume. If they want
absolutely.
to speak, they can speak today.
Yep.
But there's.
I just wanted I wanted to
I'm
give you a
sure-
level of comfort that they aren't really significant changes because we have discussed that exact language for over a year. So that we really haven't laid anything down in these clarifications that has not been discussed very clearly in public. It's just our draft language didn't clearly reflect the conversation that we've had in public. So
Can you put up the red line copy again, or it was actually purple, I think, which would show that
Existing.
section, and then so whatever's in purple, I understand is what you've added or changed. But the
See,
rest,
so it was already there? Do you understand that, Bill?
yeah. So whatever's in purple is
Yes,
what
yeah, yes, no, I understand.
Okay,
No, that's what I've been asking for is red line copies.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks.
Yeah.
Any other discussions?
Well, there was one thing. It was just a little nitpicking thing. But somewhere in this thing, I don't see it there, you had the word reservation. Now, did that mean, with regards to future use, future needs, okay? There was gonna be reservations. Reservations can mean 2 different things, right? Means you're either holding a
Could you
place,
where-
or you have
Where is
some-
this
I
reservation?
saw it on here, I was reading it on this page, maybe it was on the first page, I'm trying to find it, and I'm struggling.
Is that in relation to the Marlin Farms Dominion,
I don't know.
the Marlin Farms and Dominion sewer allocations that have been put, or I guess there's a reserve for those?
Yeah, it's on page 21.
County advertised money?
Page 21 of what?
Page 21 of chapter 3.
I may have misread it, I may have misread it. I see reserve there.
That's where I see reserved. It's with the Marling
Yeah,
Farms and
that's a
Dominion.
little different.
It's a recommendation to subset A.
I guess, I probably misread that, I guess.
2A uses the word reserve.
Reserve, I see that, yeah.
the only place I've found it.
Okay, all right, I'm cool.
Any other questions, Bill?
You'll understand that this business about the, and it's not a capacity question. It's not a plant capacity problem. That is to say, the water flowing through the plant is not reaching the limits. Well, it is to some extent reaching the limits, but that's not what the hard stop is. The hard stop is the nutrient caps. The pounds of nitrogen and phosphorus, I think, that the county is permitted to introduce into, well, basically the Chesapeake Bay. And the pounds per year cap is what's driving this whole thing. It's not that there's more wastewater flowing in, or we're close to the wastewater flowing in that the plant's capacity can treat. It's the chemicals coming out at the end of the pipe that have reached their limit. And we're the first county that's had to deal with this. So it's not the number of gallons, it's the number of pounds of nitrogen and phosphorus. And it took all of us about 6 months to understand that simple proposition. And
I understand what you're saying. I don't know that I want to open that up today. You know, we'll talk another time, I guess. Yeah.
We're all going to be talking about it for quite some time.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
so any more discussion?
Did we cover all the groups? What, did I write down 9A? Was that a topic
Yes,
of
9A is the one that we're holding, and 4A, B, C, and D we're holding. Other than that, I'd like to get approval for the rest of this with the aforementioned changes.
The no changes.
No changes.
Right.
Can I get a motion?
You're looking for everything except the ones you.
For those
just named,
5.
And you're gonna do those
We're
separately.
gonna do those separately. Yep.
Okay, so, Madam Chair, I'm going to take a stab at this. I move that the Planning Commission approve the document entitled Recommendations for Planning Commission Consideration, including the changes that were made to not, on a few of those. That's my motion.
Second?
Second.
Do you wanna exclude the ones
Oh,
you wanna?
I'm sorry. May I, pardon me, I would like to amend my motion to exclude from approval at this point comments 4A, B, C, and D,
And 9A.
and number 9A.
Friendly amendment, second, accepted.
All in favor?
Aye.
Madam Chair,
Yes, yes.
prior to that, for discussion, did 33, I believe there was a recommendation from, staff for them to make an updated change, however, Ms. Diotis was adamantly against it.
Yeah, we decided not to do it.
Okay, so,
Jeff, I included in the motion to approve with the, not changes, but the no changes accepted by.
And Jeff, that was a good idea. And while you're in discussion, I would just note that the no changes are applicable to item number 33A and 20A.
Should I further amend my motion?
Oh, we got it.
Okay, thank you. Just want to make sure. Yeah.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Now we come to the discussions. And can you pull up number 4A? In large font, please. This has to do with Centerville, right?
This is coming from Centerville Planning and Zoning, yeah.
Area that we're looking at, that's Churchill.
The one on the top
Oh, at the
comment.
top.
Yes.
They both basically.
Just every other one is highlighted, though, is the way it works. That's why you're being drawn to the purple. So is there any towns that do not have annexation plans?
So,
Not have annex.
yeah, annexation is established through the land use article, and then there are specific requirements as to how annexations work and what the county's role in an annexation agreement is. And really, the county's role is very minor, and I'm going to lean on Chris here for backup. The county's role is minor, and its main role is basically to look at the requested zoning that would result from the annexation, and if the zoning is at a higher density, then the county has the option of holding the lower density for a 5-year period or waiving that requirement, that change. So that's the county's main role in terms of...
How does this change land use?
Okay, so this request is specific to looking at the adequate public facilities that are impacted by annexation agreements. So this is...
We don't have anything to do with the AFPO, do we?
Anything to do with what?
The AFPO, isn't that state mandated?
No, this is our County of Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance.
Right. It's a county code, and all development is reviewed in comparison with the standards of the Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance. So all of the county's infrastructure is assessed to ensure that we can adequately serve it, which is a part of the legal guidance that we received as it came to the sewage capacity, is if we say we're going to grow and we have this area where we're designating growth, then we have to provide the facilities to support it. In terms of these recommendations, and they're all very similar in nature relative to the APFO, I know that the towns are not subject to the county's ordinance on adequate public facilities. However, when the county is involved in providing infrastructure, the county applies its own ordinance. And
This
this,
mostly has to do with schools,
and not,
maybe county roads.
yeah, sometimes roads, but not so much. So this has been a long-standing, I think, point of debate between the county and the towns, and one that we thought best suited with a little legal guidance from our planning attorney before any changes might be proposed. Staff has reviewed them, all of these requests, and does not suggest that we make changes other than perhaps rewording some of the language, but not the intention of the language.
What say you, Mr. Drummond?
I agree with what Amy said. This has been, it's not been a huge irritant because the towns have not had large-scale developments really since Northbrook, when you think about it, and that started almost 20 years ago. But if because, for example, the county is unable to absorb much more residential growth because of the sewer capacity, it's not a capacity problem, the discharge problem, it may be that there'll be increasing interest in developments in or around the towns, because both the Queenstown and Centerville, at least, have capacity and are not apparently at the nutrient cap limits yet. So if something of significance happens in Centerville or Queenstown that involves annexation, that's going to produce a lot of kids, the adequate public facilities ordinance is not relevant.
So, but the reason that Centerville's bringing this up is probably because that's the road they're gonna go down.
Yeah, they don't want it. They want to be free of concerns about schools. Put it bluntly. And then having someone who may propose a development to be annexed into the town to propose mitigation for a school problem.
I guess to protect the county, we say we don't change it.
Pardon me?
I would say to protect the county, we say we don't change it.
I agree with staff on this one. And it's a should. It doesn't say they must. I mean,
Right.
it's not, there's reference to the spirit of cooperative planning, and that the proposal in the comp plan is contrary to the spirit of cooperative planning. No, we think you should be doing this, town. And if they say we're not, then, it's back and forth.
At what point, if we protect the county, use Sharon's word, not trying to throw her under the bus here, but at what point can that be a cudgel for an administration to stop any development it doesn't like?
That would be,
We've had that.
If a county did that, it would stop any development it didn't like. It would be acting contrary to the adequate public facilities ordinance, probably contrary to a number of other statutes and perhaps the Maryland Constitution. So I'm engaged in a battle right now in Caroline County where something very similar to that is occurring, and the county's been sued over it. Got nothing to do with residential properties, but you can't just do what you want. And there are standards of the adequate public facilities ordinance. There's quantitative standards. And if you meet the quantitative standards, you proceed. If you don't, then you offer a mitigation plan.
But are there, maybe I'm getting too deep in the weeds, just tell me if I am, are there, I'm gonna call them reverse quantitative standards, where the county is held by the same standard that it provides the adequate public facilities? It's not cheap to build a school. It's politically, for some reason, a big football. And we built, one or two. It seems like every time we build them, before they're finished, they're to capacity, or darn near. And now we have a sewage problem, for lack of a better word. But at what point does the county become, is it held to the same standard? This is why I'm worried about, Sharon, you're saying, let's protect the county. It's got to protect everybody somehow, or try to.
I can't, that's not a question that has an answer.
All right.
I think it's boiling down to whether we change it or we don't change it, and
what I see, so it's adequate public facilities testing for all municipal developments should be part of annexation agreements. So that's what we're talking about. So it states here that the Maryland statutes require towns to prepare annexation plans for each annexation, fully describing the availability of facilities and the means for extending or expanding them as needed. They are also required to provide counties a 30-day formal review and comment period prior to the hearing on an annexation, and the provisions are secondary to the required town-county consultation on municipal growth planning. So if anything, I don't think I would be averse to softening that language where adequate public facilities testing for all municipal developments should be part of annexation agreements. Well, I guess a common theme on the comments here is that they were suggesting a language that says they encourage towns to evaluate the adequacy of public facilities when considering annexations and annexation agreements, and coordinate with the county as provided for under Maryland use planning and annexation statutes.
Well, encouraging and making them do it's very, very broad change.
And my only thing is, as I saw, like with the plumbing thing, they're already jumping through 3 or 4 hoops. Is it necessary for us to
Well, if we
mandate?
don't
I'm
change
asking-
it,
I'm
if
asking
we don't
questions.
change it, it's not,
Again, this is a regulation issue, or, I mean, again, this is a guiding light. This is not the
It
regulation.
should. That's comp plan language. How
I mean,
about if you
staff
limit
and
it
our
to
attorney
schools?
agreed not to recommend that we don't change anything, so
If it's limited to schools?
is it limited to schools?
I'm suggesting that.
We're going to ask our expert, who is Steve Cahoon.
Because isn't it also including emergency services and you keep going down the road?
No.
No?
Steve Cahoon, Department of Public Works. APFO looks at public water, public sewer, and these cases, the municipalities have their own. Public schools, the capacity that the public schools and where the kids in the new development would go to school, and then public roads. And the public roads many times are state highways or county roads, or town roads in some cases. So it's a mix of things. Where the county has responsibility for funding school construction, and we manage and monitor school capacity related to new development, is the key issue that Chris mentioned. So it's those 4 forms of infrastructure that the APFO regulates.
And any annexation agreement or plan is very likely to deal with water, sewer, and roads.
But not schools?
No, because that's a county obligation, not a town. Towns do pay, town development in towns pay the impact fee. Yeah, to the county. Towns collect the impact fee and give it to the county. But they are not subject to the testing for school capacity. And again, it hasn't been an issue because not much has been going on in annexed lands and towns.
So is there a possibility that the sentence, adequate public facilities testing for all municipal developments with regard to school capacity should be part of annexation agreements? I get what you're saying about the water.
That's the suggestion I'm making.
I think that the language they suggest is fine.
Yeah, I mean, because it's very likely that there will be no testing but for schools.
Amy, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, no, you
The
can
language
finish.
suggested by the common theme, that language they suggest is okay with you?
I think it is.
The way it's
Says the
written
same
is
thing.
fine with
It kind of does.
I agree with you.
It says the same thing, just more wordy.
It's,
It does outline agreements and coordination under the statute. So it's the language they suggest, not as written, is what we're talking about.
Centerville suggests?
Yes. The recommendation would be altered as they suggest to encourage towns to evaluate the adequacy of public facilities when considering annexations and annexation agreements and coordinate with the county as provided for under Maryland land use planning and annexation statutes.
Has nothing to do with adequate public facilities.
evaluate adequate public facilities.
Yeah, but it doesn't refer to the, I assume the language that is being proposed to be changed, when it says adequate public facilities testing, is a reference to the county's APFO.
Yes.
I think that should remain.
Okay.
But that's my view.
Well, what if we encourages that the town evaluate the adequate public facilities capitalized? Because that is what we mean, and that's bringing the two together.
The issue, and I think what the towns are bringing up, is that it's not applicable to them, period.
Yeah, they don't want to do it.
They have a
And that's-
sovereignty issue that I think is a reasonable one to argue.
Right, it's a county ordinance, and if they're bringing, if they're dealing with something in the town, their position is those county ordinances don't apply.
Yeah, and they don't, and there's only about 12 words in that sentence that they don't like, and because it's a little too strong for them. This is 20 years worth of back and forth.
Wordsmithing.
Gonna be at least 21, I'd say. The concern that I have off the top of my head, and I have limited information here, but what about towns, leaving names out of it, but that are in financial trouble, and that they have done things because of MOUs to expand nutrient or sewer plants, and now since the recession, the development dried up, they haven't been able to get the thing done. Business proposals that come to town get run off. And they're maybe in serious financial trouble without being able to expand the user base for that sewage treatment plant. Do we just say, sorry about your luck?
No, we say if you want to build a lot of houses, you got to contribute to the cost of schools in the county, is what
Well,
we say.
that was what the impact fee did.
Not, Steve can talk about that.
Yeah. First off, hey, Steve, after all these years, how much is the impact fee these days?
Offhand, I don't recall, but it's over $5 a square foot. It's like $5.50 or something a square foot.
542, I was thinking, something like that.
So every new home built in the county, whether it's in the town or in the county, if it's not an age-restricted unit, pays a school impact fee. And that impact fee goes to pay debt service on schools that have been constructed to create capacity to accommodate new development.
And they're paying that.
Yes.
They put the development in, right?
Yes. The APFO would look at specifically if, say, a specific school in a town, an elementary school, is at capacity, and somebody proposed a development, the APFO would say, stop, you can't move forward with the development. And this is in the county. You know, there's a lot of debate on how it would apply to town. But in the county, the APFO would say you have to wait for the county to build capacity, or you can put forward a mitigation plan to accommodate the new kids you're going to put in that specific school. But we would have to
build your own school?
We would have to account for the impact fees that they would be paying in that mitigation plan. So build an addition or pay towards an addition. If a development required, say, 5 or 6 additional seats in that school for elementary kids, they could provide a mitigation payment that may exceed the impact fees. If it does, you know, they would be due the difference. But we have to account for impact fees in that formula.
So Steve, you may or may not know the answer, and maybe Chris does. Doesn't the COG, the Council of Governments, also share in those when they communicate and determine the shared services? The sheriff's office, schools, things of that nature? Is that incorporated as part of the COG?
They have those discussions, yes. I mean, the COG is the town council members as well as county commissioners, and they discuss a variety of county-wide issues and infrastructure issues.
So it can be negotiated at that level as far as who's responsible for what level of maintenance, for lack of a better word, since we're talking about schools.
When an annexation application petition is submitted to a town, it's not done in a vacuum. I mean, the county's aware of it. The county knows it's going on. There's a hearing process. There's a back and forth. It's a public, open process where anybody can comment, and these things it's set up so these things can be looked at and discussed.
This board weighs in on annexations and makes recommendation to the commissioners, and then the commissioners ultimately process that annexation request.
Amy,
So whether we put language in there about requiring, encouraging, those discussions are going to be part of a process. I think Chris was right. It comes down to whether the language is encourage or shall or may or could or should. I mean, I think that's really what the language boils down to. Chris?
I agree. I don't think we can put in the word shall.
Right.
We can't put in shall be part of an annexation agreement, because the towns are correct to say that those are contracts between the town and a landowner. The county is not a party. That's why the only verb construction that can be in the comp plan is should be. And it seems to me that that language is helpful, for example, as Jeff points out, during the COG meetings. Come on, guys, you've got to help us out here with school construction if you're going to do this.
Amy, so the recommendation as currently written says adequate public facilities testing for all municipal developments should be part of annexation agreements. In keeping that language as it is it asking these municipalities to go above and beyond the steps and the procedures and the approvals that they already go through?
Don't believe so, and Steve can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is this strategy is not changed. This is not an updated strategy from previous iterations of the comprehensive plan. So this does not mark a change in the way the coordination has been encouraged.
Yeah, I think the key word in that whole sentence is should. You know, and if the town and the county are working together on an annexation and understanding where it's going and agree, you know, those things will happen. If we're at odds for some reason, then we're going to bring up that they should do it, and they're going to, decide whether they do or not.
It took me 10 minutes to get here, but so this is just an emphasis of current strategy and practices. Thank you.
I don't feel bad. I think I just had an illumination too.
An epiphany.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay. I'm good.
Good, let's go to 9B.
9B or 9A?
I mean, I'm sorry, 4B. 4B.
She's really in a hurry.
There's no 9B. Which,
4B is
this is kind of
Churchill's
like
go at
reiterating
thing.
the same thing.
Aren't they all the same? Yeah.
All three of them.
Really are.
Yep.
C is nuanced. C is specific to when county funding for town infrastructure occurs, when town provides when the county provides infrastructure when it's in the town, and this is again another long-standing strategy. But the previous one is specifically the same comment. A and B are the same.
And I think this goes back to the conversation of the COGS and part of the negotiation that they do with the shared services. So I don't know if it requires much discussion.
What county funding does what funding does the county provide to the towns for its infrastructure? Other than schools, arguably.
Roads.
It's more on a project specific. We might upgrade roads for the detention center addition that's being planned or something along those lines. We built the roads for this building here, But that's not, that's a development related, that's not providing funding for infrastructure to the town. What's that language say? During the last comp plan update, there was a lot of discussion about town-county agreements, and agreements that would have the towns accommodating more growth with the county participating in infrastructure improvements, and this may be a reference back to that. And here, I think the language of conditioned on compliance is probably what the town's concerned about. Again, if it's going to be a collaborative, if it's a town-county relationship on dealing with infrastructure, there's, you know, it's going to be something that's discussed and come to an agreement on.
And those strategies, those recommendations are in the plan in terms of the goal to foster government cooperation and participation, strategy to promote interjurisdictional cooperation with respect to planning and growth-related issues, to sustainably manage growth. And so those recommendations comprehensively are establish joint planning agreements where appropriate, continue participation in and support the COG, and then that's where county funding for town infrastructure should be conditioned on compliance. So I think in the spirit of what this strategy is meant to promote, I think a softening of that language is probably appropriate, especially when we have a note from the Centerville Planning Commission that they find this language to be objectionable. And I certainly am not comfortable with generating an objectionable feeling when we're trying to promote cooperation.
Well, there's some hyperbole in the Centerville's comments, so let's not get too worked up.
So there were some suggestions for softened language. Is there any one, Amy, that you and your staff would be?
Their language is, I have no idea what that last sentence means.
That you would be inclined to be comfortable with, or?
And again, this is a should.
Yeah, but I have to say, I'm a little troubled by this sentence too. I'm trying to figure out how to modify it. County funding for town infrastructure, and this is in the context of, give us the context again, please?
Well,
as set, Amy just read it. Oh. I'm sorry, Steve. It's just ours or the Centerville's?
It's our
Yeah.
current draft.
Don't you recognize our branding?
Promote sustainably. Buzzword.
So there was discussion during the last comp plan update about town-county cooperation in providing infrastructure when the town is accepting a significant growth for the county. You know, if the county doesn't have available areas to grow and the towns are accepting that growth, should the county participate in the infrastructure to support that? And I think the town-county agreements were those types of agreements on how that would move forward. Basically, to implement the Centerville comprehensive plan, you know, the different comprehensive plans each municipality has.
That language is included in the chapter itself, and then these are just the strategies to make those things happen.
It should be joint planning agreements that provide county funding for town infrastructure should consider compliance with the APFO.
I think that's something along of what Steve and I discussed. So if you want to
Would be-
say that slowly.
Joint planning agreements.
The creation of a joint planning agreement will address what it says. We haven't done one.
But we
We've
do
done
have
joint
that.
community plans
Pardon me?
we've done joint community plans in the past with the town of Centerville and the town of Queenstown. Queenstown since has moved forward with doing its own independent comprehensive plan as Centerville's doing now, so.
Okay, well, let's try this. Joint planning agreements that provide county funding for town infrastructure should consider compliance with.
Yeah, I think
That's pretty soft.
Well, we're talking about agreements that haven't been created.
Right.
So, you know, there's going to be a whole lot of discussion about what they need to include, how much, and what they're specifically for, so.
Do the job, do you think?
Yeah, so that's very similar to what Steve and I discussed in response to this comment. So joint planning agreements that provide county funding for town infrastructure, the agreements should consider compliance with APFO.
Which means it'll never happen, so that's good. The town will be happy.
In the context of that strategy to promote that cooperation, and the first recommendation is to establish the agreements, and then the second recommendation is to continue to support COG, where these conversations can take place, then if the county has a role in funding an aspect of that agreement, then we should look at our APFO. Should consider.
Should consider.
Not be conditioned.
Passing thought.
Right.
Okay. And the last one, or not last one, next to last one is for C.
D.
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 That was for C.
Dog.
D. D is in David. APFO should not apply to growth area. How can that be? How can you have growth without making sure you have adequate facilities? So I'm confused over that one.
There's one issue that comes up with APFOs is if a certain area of the county is at capacity. You know, say we have a middle school that is at capacity on Kent Island. That would shut down a district, a school district, for new development until that capacity problem is dealt with, and therefore pushing that growth or development someplace else. You know, so I think this comment is kind of in that context, but then also, if you're going to have growth, you need to make sure the public facilities keep up with it.
Right.
I mean, that's really the purpose of the APFO. APFO is more of a timing that it'll occur of when development occurs, the facilities will be there. And, you know, fortunately, I mean, our school system has done a pretty good job keeping up with the school capacity. Road capacity could be a different issue. Sewer capacity is an issue beyond our control, you know, so. And the APFO also, if the county doesn't move forward with providing capacity when it can, then there's a certain amount of time the development would be on pause or wait, and then it could move forward. And these are projects for APFO. It is projects over 20 units for water, sewer, and roads that are tested, and then for schools, it's over 6 units that we test. So I think the comment is with an APFO, if you have districts that are shut down, you can encourage growth in the rural areas. Unfortunately, the septic bill that was passed by the state of Maryland has limited a lot of
Right, so what are
alternatives.
they asking us to do? I'm like,
Asking us not to apply the APFO standards to growth areas in the county.
Could you restrict it, I mean, as an example, for adequate facilities for housing 55 and over, or for affordable housing, you know, for the low-income category? I mean, if you made those two as exceptions, you know, would that, what's the drawback?
So APFO would require a test for water, sewer, and roads for a 55 and older community. It would not require a test for schools because they will not generate school kids. You know, they aren't allowed in the community. And the low income, there are some types of projects like affordable housing or subsidized housing. It's subsidized if it's taking state or federal money where the APFO would not be applicable. So there's a few categories like that you mentioned that are exempt or not. It doesn't apply to.
We don't need to address them in our document.
Already in the APFO.
It's
Schools haven't really shut anything down.
We've had a
slowed
few delays.
Down that they've had to pay some money. But other than that,
we've had the APFO for about 20 years. You know, it's applied countywide. It applies in growth areas, out of growth areas. It's been set up that way. Another thing with the APFO is where you set your thresholds for level of service. That's been discussed over time. Should schools be at 100%, 120%? It's just it is an additional step in the development review process and an additional cost for projects that are, you know, for larger projects.
What does it cost to comply with the APFO? And can you tell me if how many projects have been denied because of APFO requirements?
No, there's some that have been delayed. There were some school capacity issues in Graysonville with Graysonville Elementary School, and the projects waited until the county moved forward and constructed the capacity.
How long did that take?
But Steve, didn't they do a fee in lieu, like make a donation per child to help the Graysonville extension on the elementary school?
there's two different things there.
We went through that process of evaluating what that cost per seat would be for APFO for the Graysonville Elementary School edition, but neither of the projects moved forward immediately. Both of them took their time, and the county moved forward with building that capacity that was needed anyway. So since the county provided the capacity and they waited, you know, they redid their studies and the capacity was there and they moved forward.
I don't think any project has been, quote unquote, denied because of school capacity. We should note that when the APFO was originally adopted some 20 or so years ago, the test was whether a school was at 120% of school-rated capacity. About 15 or so years ago, that percentage was dropped by the county commissioners to 100% of state-rated capacity. And you can imagine the reasons for that. The arguments for 100% of state-rated capacity is why have more kids in a school than the state has rated it has the capacity for. And the arguments to keep it at 120% were that the state won't even consider helping to fund new schools or expanded schools until a school reaches 120% of school rated capacity. So if you keep schools at 100%, you'll never get new schools or expanded schools because the state won't contribute to them.
Where we've seen the most mitigation is roads. With roads, there are certain improvements that can be needed by a development, additional turn lanes, additional, widening of a road, curb and gutter along a road frontage, or a financial contribution for a intersection that is not operating at acceptable levels of service. And that can, those types of contributions we've seen more out of projects than, we've never accepted school mitigation money. We looked at it in Graysonville, for 2 projects, but where we've seen mitigation is road improvements.
That change of language for the towns and municipalities.
4C.
Now we go to 9A. We blow that up in a large font.
Page number on it? No.
I can summarize that while she's blowing it up. There's a request to address litter on public roads and specific public roads, and to recommend 2 actions: to create a trash committee to monitor and address the growing trash problem, and to review and consider a tool that I guess reports and monitors trash, roadside trash. And staff just noted, to address this comment, that there is a directive action in the transportation chapter that encourages public and private investment to improve the visual quality of the roadside environment. That's on page 6-13 of the transportation chapter. And technically, littering is illegal. And I'm not sure that this is really a comprehensive planning issue. And so staff didn't suggest a change here, but felt that we did not want to be dismissive, as I know it's a serious concern, and wanted to give you the opportunity to discuss the initiatives suggested.
I would agree with you that I don't think it's a comprehensive planning.
Yeah, it's not a land
Topic.
use issue. But it is a problem. We take that and that whole subject and put it in, like, maybe May or June's agenda.
Outside of the comprehensive plan, yeah.
Yeah, because it's not really part of the comprehensive plan. It's not a
Well,
land
if
issue.
we're gonna do that, can I ask that something else be added to it? If we're gonna discuss trash, and that's Johnson grass, that's in, noxious weeds. It is getting to be a significant problem in this county with the state roads, county roads not mowing like they used to. These weeds are becoming an issue, and these weeds are illegal in this state. There's no teeth in the law, I'm
How
told.
did they get planted?
Birds, wind,
But
trucks.
there is a weed control program that runs
Yeah,
through,
But I don't wanna throw it on them. It's a big county.
but they do
Lot of
that. I mean,
roads.
that's a part
Yeah,
of,
But there's, you could just ride up and down 301 this year from the, 2 new circles we have all the way up to the rest area. And it was just loaded, and it's all gone to seed. You know, so it's only gonna get worse, but that's something that we need to do something to get under control, or force the state to get it under control.
Yeah, we can report out on that because there is an
It's
active.
everywhere, it's not just there, it's everywhere.
Yeah, there is an active program that's
I
supposed to
know.
be staying on top
I
of
know.
that, so we can report
they're
out
so-
on that. too.
They're behind, they
Okay.
can't handle it,
All right.
apparently.
Okay, so now we can take a vote. Maybe? That
So
would
we're
delete
gonna
9A.
take them as a whole, you're keeping
Yes.
them all the same except for 4C.
4C.
You're changing the language that Drummond's.
Right. And 9A we're deleting, or keeping the same.
No, with
Not
no
No
change.
change,
the
no
change
change,
of the-
right.
The recommendation.
So did we already make a motion to accept this document with the exception of?
These five,
These
yes,
five.
we did, we did.
Okay.
Not only we did, you did.
Yeah, I did. Okay. do you want me-
Royal we secretary.
Let me take a stab at it, okay.
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, I make a recommendation that after review of the 5 groups that had been set aside for discussion, we will make only one change with regard to comments 4A through D, and change the language with regard to town and municipality APFO testing, as suggested by the county attorney, adopted by the planning and zoning director.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. Now we're closing the comp plan work session, and we will open public hearing regarding the final public comments prior to the recommendation and conveyance of the final draft comprehensive plan and Kent Narrows community plan to the county commissioners. All 418 comments received are being made part of the record for this public hearing. Again, I ask that you not repeat comments considered during the work session. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to present public comment.
Okay, Madam
Madam Chairman,
Wait a minute.
we take a 5-minute break.
Well, I think we're going to take a lunch break
Okay.
before we
All
go
right.
into this.
Okay.
So I was going to wait and ask you to
Okay.
read it into the
Okay.
record.
No, she wants to.
Oh, she wants to do it now, all right.
Keep it
The
there,
following
December
notice of public hearing appeared in the Record Observer on December 24th, December 31st, and January 2nd, I should say, in December of 2021 and January 7th of 2022. Notice of public hearing of the Queen Anne's County Planning Commission. Pursuant to Section 18.1-217 of the Queen Anne's County Code, the Queen Anne's County Planning Commission gives notice that it will hold a public hearing on the draft 2021 Queen Anne's County Comprehensive Plan and the Kent Narrows Community Plan. Hearing will be held on January 13th, 2022. The notice says it was started at 8:45, so I appreciate the patience of those that are waiting until almost noon and apparently afternoon at the Planning Commission's hearing room here in Centerville, Maryland. The purpose of the public hearing before the Planning Commission is to provide an opportunity for all interested persons to be heard on the proposed draft 2021 comprehensive plan and the Kent Narrows Community Plan before the Planning Commission makes its final recommendation regarding the proposed plans to the board, to the county commissioners. The draft comp plan and Kent Narrows Community Plan may be reviewed at the county website, which is QACplan2021.com, and at the Department of Planning and Zoning's offices here on Vincent Street in Centerville. The notice of public hearing concludes with information as to how those with disabilities, and particularly hearing impairments, may access this hearing room and acquire assistive listening devices. I'm satisfied, Madam Chairman, that the notice and procedural prerequisites to convening the public hearing have been satisfied.
Thank you. With that, we will take at least a 5-minute break.
Okay.
I don't think we have lunch here yet.
Oh, okay.
So we'll take a 5-minute break and go back, maybe hear some hearings.
crab shells. Right, they all get a little thinner.
We're gonna have a celebratory, that's the plan. Okay, we've read the notice in. Public comments,
No virtual.
no virtual. Okay, Georgiana Winley, she here?
She was in the back, if she is.
There she is. I wasn't used to Georgiana, it was Gigi that I thought.
Father is George, mother is Anna. Thank you. So bear with me, I just have to get my comments up here. Hi, Georgiana Winley, Executive Director of the Kent Narrows Development Foundation. Thank you for having us here today. My comments are going to be in two parts. The first part is commenting on the comments that you just spoke about and the changes that you just made. There was one comment that we flagged. It was number 25A. It was the comment by Heather Murphy of MDOT on the Beach to Bay. She suggested some changes in that, and she changed the first bullet point in the vision on page 6.1 to read, coordinating with towns and state agencies for new traffic patterns. We have been a part of that coordination as well, and we are not a town or a state agency. So respectfully asking that that could be modified, maybe to add regional agencies or something like that. The Kent Narrows Development Foundation is intimately involved with that Beach to Bay process when it happens, because our exits are the ones that often get closed. So just asking that perhaps that be considered as a change. The second part of my comments are related to basically sequencing of the Kent Narrows plan versus the community plans, or versus the comp plan. Our time deadlines were different than the other time deadlines. So basically, the Kent Narrows Development Foundation has not seen its plan in total. We have not had a chance to review it. We did send a letter to that effect to the Planning Commission, which I would like to, if I have time, my 3 minutes, read into the record. Or if you know that you've received it, I won't read that whole letter. But basically, I'll just say, this letter was sent on December 10th, 2021, from our chairman, Jody Schultz, and it was sent to the County Planning and Zoning Commission and Amy Mordock. And I wanted to make sure that you did have that, and it basically states that that we did not have a chance to review our plan in total. So what you're seeing is a plan that came out in October. And our deadline for our changes wasn't until November 5th. So we haven't had a chance to see our changes. That's it in summary. And we would like to see our changes and be able to have the opportunity to approve that document in full before we make any recommendations to you or the county commissioners. I think that would be it. Thank you.
So that's the only sign up I have. Is there any other public comment? Kevin? You're supposed to sign up in the future, but come on.
Wanted to wait until see how everything proceeded to determine whether or not comment was called for in that case. So, Kevin Waterman, on behalf the past president of the Bay Area Association of Realtors, I just wanted to first and foremost thank Amy and the Planning Commission for their attention to the comments that Bay Area had submitted, particularly those two that had initially been relegated to the no changes needed category. We're very pleased with that. The only thing we might suggest the consideration of further would be with regards to the proposed language on the changes with regards to the sewer capacity issue. adding in the one item further about investigating how Queen Anne's County, with minimal growth since the watershed improvement plan came into being, is the first county in the watershed to run into this limit, and if there may be either legal or political avenues to getting the limit raised in addition to those that have already been outlined in the language. And in particular, I would direct attention to comment number 15 from the No Changes Needed, which was by Charles Boyd with Maryland Department of Planning, who notes, without available capacity, future growth, infill, and affordable housing goals will be difficult to achieve, particularly within the county municipal growth areas. Planning is available to assist with convening a dialogue with the county and the Maryland Department of the Environment to address capacity planning. That may be an avenue to some of the other ways to get those maybe see if the nutrient caps themselves can be lifted, raised, or otherwise challenged.
But trust me, the county's doing everything that humanly possible, looking for ways to increase what we can do.
We agree, just think it's probably worthwhile to have all those avenues noted within the plan. Thank you again very much.
Thank you. Barry, another late man.
I also did not sign up because I wasn't sure there was anything to comment on until I heard what you guys did.
Introduce
Barry
yourself.
Waterman, Centerville, Maryland. I sat where you guys did during the last comp plan update, and I'm going to tell you this is the difference between heaven and hell. This process has been so much smoother. It's not caused the animosity that was caused during the last plan. And I think you guys are at a good place that you can make a recommendation on the plan. I think staff has been very receptive to some of the problems that we had. Only thing I wanted to comment on, and I think you guys have adequately addressed it, is the APFO. The APFO has a long and convoluted history. It was never originally implemented in regard to adequacy of anything. It was created by and adopted by a group of county commissioners who thought that every house built in Queen Anne's County was a problem, and they wanted to come up with a way to stop houses from being built. And when it didn't work at first, they simply changed the capacity levels. You can talk about school capacity. There's 50 seats in this room. You would think capacity would be 50. That's not how school capacity works. There's an arbitrary formula that the state school board has to create a funding mechanism. So it's not related to capacity. If you try and figure out how it works, you never would be able to. But it's not a matter of how many kids should adequately fit into that school. It's a funding capacity. So when we were unable to stop growth by saying we're going to match the 120%, we simply dropped it to 100% because, that sounds great. Who would want more than 100% of 50 seats in the room so everybody has to stand up? But that's not how it worked. It only worked by, if you get rid of state funding, then you're never going to be able to accommodate that growth. So as long as you guys soften the language the way you did to suggest that it should be considered in the municipal areas, I think that's great because it should be considered. Whether it should be applied in the municipality is another story, because I can tell you any developer goes into any town, anywhere in Queen Anne's County and proposes something significant, the town wants them to fix their problems. So you're always going to be at a conflict between the town and the county over who should get the benefit of whatever that development is. True that both of them are absorbing costs for that, and they should be addressed. But I think you guys have done a good job, and I personally am satisfied with where you guys are to push this forward. Thank you.
Wow, what a recommendation. Okay, so I will now close the public hearing, or is there any more public comment?
Can I ask him a question?
Sure.
Is that appropriate?
Sure.
Barry, you're okay with pushing this forward, having just heard the young lady there say that they haven't even had the Kenton-Aires hadn't even had a chance to look at their plan.
Well, I think when we close the public hearing, we're going to hear from Amy on that story.
Okay, all right. That concerns
The
me.
reason I'm okay with it is because this is not the end. You guys are going to push a plan forward, and if what Amy said she was going to write up is not what she writes up, then I'll be there in front of the county commissioner saying this is not what was talked about. So you're eventually going to have to move it forward, and then there's going to be a final plan. And if the county commissioners think that whatever I and everyone else in the public says has bearing on it's not right, then they'll send it back down to you and say change it again.
Okay, There being no more public comments, I will now close the public hearing and reopen the Planning Commission regular meeting session to hold discussion and conduct 2 votes regarding the comment document and the recommendation to the county commissioners regarding the final draft comprehensive plan and Kent Narrows community plan.
Amy, I think you need to address the comments about.
Okay,
Kent Narrows.
first of all, I want to address 2 process items. And number 1 is, during your work session, you've thoroughly reviewed and discussed and voted on the materials as presented. And so now that one more suggestion was made to the documents that you've reviewed and voted on, and I think it's worth discussing that suggested change and then reaffirming your vote following this public hearing, because you would have wanted to have considered additional comments that would have arisen. And so Gigi's comment relative to the MDOT collaboration, and I lost my page. I just had it open to that page. Wait,
Page 7, Amy.
What is it?
7.
Thank you. So I want to address that. Oh, I'm in the wrong spot.
Number?
It's in the recommended changes?
Yeah, number
Okay, I was in the
25.
wrong.
Number 25, if you're looking.
Okay, to that point, I would say, I do know that Kent Narrows is, the Development Foundation, and Gigi specifically is the executive director, is directly engaged in coordination with State Highway. Technically speaking, there are no individual foundations or organizations that are called out. The foundation is really considered a part of the county. It's located within the county and not within an incorporated town. So that, in essence, the Kent Narrows Development Foundation is included in county coordination efforts in the way that this strategy is written. I would just hesitate to call out any specific organizations, because then we're bound to leave out an organization who does also collaborate.
Understand. Okay, any discussion?
And do you have any comments on Gigi and the lack of ability to review? When was there the Kent Narrows development plan? When was that available for them to review as we are looking at it today?
We have all been on exactly the same schedule. What we have done as staff is we afforded additional meetings and additional comment periods, and actually shared more drafts, more of the drafting more closely with the Kent Narrows Development Foundation. They've had a really active and thorough review team in 3, led by Gigi and Jody as the president, and one other member, Victoria Hoffman. And they've been wonderful in reviewing all of the drafts. So we've been closely coordinating with them and sharing drafts, and actually have afforded them extensions in time to prepare. But we had to really, once the 60-day review started, we really had to stick to this timeline. Their comments are being absorbed in the same way that the comments presented to you. The difference in terms of what you're looking at and a lot of the Kent Narrows comments is that along with other organizations like the Economic Development Board or Emergency Services Boards, those organizations are a part of our technical committee. So basically, we take the advice of our technical committee. We don't debate their expertise, and when we receive their input, that's the information that we use to update the plan. So they've received the 60-day review draft is their draft, and then those changes that we agreed to and that we continue to receive beyond that time frame and during the 60-day review will all be absorbed. And we had explained upon receipt of a letter requesting additional time, the county administrator and I attended the Kent Narrows Development Foundation to explain that we have a legal time frame that has to be followed once the 60-day review begins, and we had to get to that point and move forward. That at this point, it was our hope to have received a recommendation from the foundation on the draft, the 60-day review draft, and agreeing to the changes. They were uncomfortable because they hadn't seen a final draft and decided not to submit comments at that time, and were advised that when that draft is available, which we hope that will be available on the 25th if this moves forward today, at that time there will be 60 days for them to verify that all of those comments are absorbed. And as Barry says, if this team doesn't deliver as we've promised, then there will be an opportunity to discuss that with the county commissioners.
Okay. So if I understand that in approving the comprehensive plan and the Kent Narrows Development Foundation plan are really one and the same in a discussion we had here about an hour ago, where you are saying this is what we're going to do. We have given it the okay for the most part, and we are trusting, without seeing the final draft of the entire comprehensive plan, that those recommendations will be made as you've represented. And I
wouldn't say the word trusting. I would say that you've directed staff
Yes.
with your votes
Yes.
to make these changes.
Thank you. So, and that
Okay.
the changes that have been directed to the staff will be made as.
They don't have the discretion to,
Right.
You've told them what to do.
Right, and I assume that the comments made on the Kent Narrows Development Plan and the recommendation you made are going to follow the same path with our direction.
Correct.
Okay.
So can I get a recommendation from the Planning Commission to the county commissioners for the Queen Anne's County Comprehensive Plan and the Kent Narrows Community Plan as part of the commissioners' meeting, our regular meeting today? We did it in work session. Now I'm asking for it as part of our meeting today.
Can I ask if you did anything with 25A or not? Just now.
25A was the one with Barrett, with Kevin?
Yeah, that GD asked.
Kevin asked about?
No, the transportation, I think.
Gigi
I
asked
think
about.
Amy said.
No, we did not, because it's already covered. We didn't want to point out Kent Narrows
No change.
development.
We accepted staff's recommendation on.
Right.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may I make a recommendation that the Queen Anne County Planning Commission make formal recommendation to the Queen Anne County Commissioners to accept the Queen Anne County Comprehensive Plan 2022 and the Kent Narrows Community Plan 2022 with amendments and direction to staff for all reconsiderations of public comment.
Second.
And we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Now I get one more recommendation. Can I get a recommendation for my favorite?
Nope.
Oh, wait a minute, we have conversation. What?
Madam Chairman,
What's the question?
I'm opposed. I just want to make that sure you're aware of that.
Okay, you're opposed
I'm
to?
opposed to it.
Okay.
Yes.
Amy?
A mention of the notations that what has been presented meets the land use article. Just want to make sure that we've covered all of our bases and moving forward with our recommendation. I just want to go on the record to note that we've reviewed in accordance with the land use ordinance is charged for our planning commission to investigate the required elements of the plan, and that the plan preparation has included the required purpose, scope, vision, implementation, and public interest. Just to ensure that we're on the record noting that we followed the land use article process in our recommendation.
Okay. Amend the recommendation? Is that what we want to do?
If you could.
You amend them?
Jeff, do you have this, do you have
Can
that
you
in front of you? There's-
amend that? I didn't see
To
that.
amend your motion to include the 3 bullet points.
On page 2 of the briefing, if you're looking for it.
How many papers every which way? Okay, here and there, as amended to include those 3 bullet points.
That'll work, that'll
That's
work.
good.
Thank you.
Sharon, does that work?
Yes. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Yes, I'm opposed.
Okay. There being no further business, may I have my favor recommendation?
General public
General public.
Oh, general public comment? You have any of that? No, Bruce? No? Oh, Mr. Jody? Are you coming up for public comment? Okay, that's fine, please.
So Jody Schultz, Chester, I just wanted to be clear a little bit, I guess, because we've just approved a document that I'm not sure what's all in it. Is that fair to say, council?
If that's what you want to say.
Well, it seems to me, particularly with the Kent Narrows plan, we had a lot of comments in it. We worked great with Amy, but, you know, it's just a little confusing where we're approving such a grand document and really don't know what's in it at the end of the day, other than we have the opportunity to comment to the county commissioners. I'm not sure they know what's in it.
They will before they have to look at it.
Well, one would assume, but this body is the body of creating those recipes. County commissioners, my experience is that they really don't dive into this stuff. They rely on the
I don't know
recommendations.
that that's entirely fair. I think it's,
Historically,
I think it's pretty clear that the changes that will be included are editorial and not substantive, no changes at all, or I think 3 or 4 changes. And if you don't like what's not changed, well, that's what you got to tell the commissioners.
And in fairness, this is the drafting board. They're legally, through the land use article, charged with drafting the comp plan, drafting the zoning code. And so that's what they've done, and they've completed that drafting exercise with these final edits. So really, it is appropriate now that that final draft will be posted on the 25th of January.
so all the comments that really didn't make it from Kent Narrows, as an example, would be in the 25th draft
They will be.
of January 25th. And that's going to be the final document that the commissioners are going to review, so then we'll take a stab at that, I guess. And if the commissioners feel like it doesn't smell right, they come back to you guys, right, for another round of
Exactly.
stuff.
But we're not anticipating that.
That's my first comment. Thank you. Thank you.
But as Mr. Drummond says, we've made the document as it sits right now, we've only authorized 3 or 4 changes.
There are.
Have not approved the document that's actually going to go to the commissioners. There's going to be a change. We haven't even seen that document. We don't know what the wording is.
Well,
I'm sorry. It's like the tail's wagging the dog on this thing. I sat on a bank board for 12, 15 years. We approved policy all the time, and never once did we give, well, okay, write it up and that'll be good enough. We approved the policy. You know, we looked at the wording, we saw the red line documents, we saw the changes that were made, or we saw the new policy, whatever it was, and we approved that. Not something that's gonna be posted in a couple of weeks.
We have been looking at these drafts for 2 years.
Well, I get that. I understand you guys work. Yeah, I just have never seen this before.
Well, I'm just to explain,
Sorry.
my vote. I had the document that we were discussing today. I, as a planning commission member, have had my head in that document for many, 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 many months. So the fact that there were 3 or 4 changes made here today is only going to change that document very minutely. And I'm very comfortable with what I saw, and that the couple of changes that were made will be made according to the direction of the Planning Commission. So the document that we've all had our heads in has not really changed substantively from all the months we've been reviewing it. So that's my viewpoint.
Do you realize we have lawyers still arguing the meaning of the comma in the Second Amendment?
Sure.
Okay?
Well, yeah, we got them still arguing over what is this too.
Right.
Yeah. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, maybe it's nitpicking, but I'm sorry. I think.
No need to apologize?
Yep. Thanks. Appreciate it. I'll shut up
Madam
now.
Chair, will you accept a motion to adjourn?
Can I get a second?
I will second that.
Adjourn.
All right.
Just checking on that. I don't want to be-